Take no prisoners.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Wednesday, September 6th meeting of Health and Human Services and Infrastructure and Economic Development Committees will come to order. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? We have a motion by Drollet, support by Toko. Can you please vote? Thank you very much. I believe the agenda is adopted. Number 4, approval of minutes. We have 4A, Health and Human Services, dated August 21st, 2017. And also Infrastructure and Economic Development, dated August 23rd, 2017. We have a motion to approve both of them. Motion by Brown, support by Carabelli. Any comments or questions? Please vote. Eventually. Made it easy. Thank you very much. Number 5, public participation. We have 5 minutes maximum per speaker about something related to the agenda. Yes, sir. Can you please turn the microphone on? There's a button. Perfect.
Good afternoon. My name's Patrick Daniels. I live at 21843 Elmway, Clinton Township. I'm also the Veteran Service Chairman for the county. I see we have a lot of new commissioners who don't know me and haven't heard of me, but the ones who do will tell you that I eat, breathe, and sleep veterans. We're here today because recently there was a report that came out from the Department of Veterans Affairs that rated the VA hospitals. The Ann Arbor VA had 4 stars out of 5. Saginaw VA had 4 stars out of 5. Detroit VA had 1 star out of 5. And when the congressional delegation went down to the VA hospital and had a meeting with the director and the staff and said, explain to us why you got 1 star, the answer was they deal with low-income veterans, and you can't make those guys happy no matter what you do. If some department head came to you and you asked them why the people in your area weren't getting good service, and they said to you because the people in your district are low income and you can't make them happy no matter what you do, I'm sure somebody would be looking for a new job. Unfortunately, they haven't done that at the VA. The reason we're here today, there's a resolution on the agenda urging the Secretary of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Detroit VA Hospital to do whatever steps are necessary to bring the service up to par. 1 out of 5 stars is not acceptable to us. Your constituents use that hospital. The people here in Southeast Michigan use that hospital. I've contacted some of the state reps and we're looking to get them to do the same thing. Something down there has to change. They're losing nurses twice as fast as any other hospital in the country. Veterans are waiting 2-3 months for medical equipment that they should have today. We could get into my last 3 years' experience with the VA, but that would take much longer than 5 minutes. The reason we're all here today is to urge you to pass that resolution and stand with us and demand that our veterans get better care than what they're getting now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pat. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak? Going one? Yes, sir.
My name is Tom Francis. I live at 16761 Forest View Drive. In the last couple of months, I tried to get dental help downtown. I was told at that time that if I hadn't been a prisoner of war or I wasn't homeless, I do not qualify whatsoever for dental work. I then I went to a dentist and they told me that I would need roughly $5,000 to do the dental work that needed to be done. Extensive root canals and bridges and whatever. I had them start doing the work on me, and then I had a situation that occurred. The dentist's office wasn't open that day, and I had an abscessed tooth. So I called the VA hospital, and I told them I kept calling the VA hospital, I should say. I kept calling the hospital and to find out if there was a dentist on board, because all the dentist's offices that I could try and get to were closed. So I kept calling, and that was on a Friday. I called, and no one answered. I called on Saturday, and then I was thought I was going to die, and no one answered. They kept saying that the nurse on duty was going to get back to me, but that never happened. I got through one time. On Sunday, I called the number that you call if you're ready to kill yourself, okay? I called there. That was in Washington, I believe, somewhere. And she answered the phone, and I told her what had transpired, and I said, the pain is so immense. I said, I just feel like I should go upstairs and blow my brains out, because it had affected my eyes, and my throat was all bulged out, and I was like one step away from doing myself in. And she said, oh my God, she says, let me call there. She actually called there to the VA hospital in Detroit and was told there was no one there that could help me and that I should go to the nearest hospital. I said, okay, so that's what I did. I went to another hospital. They got me some painkillers and whatnot. And the next day, they informed me of a doctor that would take care of it for me. And so on Monday, being a holiday, they had opened up his doctor's office, and he had to bring in a nurse, and they extracted that tooth. The tooth had not only got infected, but it was actually cracked in 3 places. And he said, I'm surprised that you even could drive here, much less anything else. That's the type of service we're getting downtown. It's unbelievably terrible, to say the least. There are doctors that do, I had a doctor there, did a fairly good job, but I waited 1.5 years for an operation for my leg. And after 1.5 years, I got in at Beaumont, and Beaumont took care of the problem, not the VA hospital. They're just so lax down there of giving a damn. And something needs to get done. Someone needs to get fired down there, and you turn some heads over and get rid of the dog meat that's down there. That head nurse, that nurse is supposed to be there. She's supposed to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's supposed to be someone on duty there that turns around and helps you out in case of an emergency. I can tell you that last week wasn't there.
All right, thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Board of Commissioners. Joseph Hunt, 8306 Stanley, homeowner and taxpayer in the County of Macomb. Primarily, I've come for the budget review of the Martha T. Berry Medical Facility. I feel that Kevin Evans has done a fantastic job in presenting the public with information regarding the turnaround of Martha T. Berry. With regard to veteran services, because that's funded by a millage, I'm curious if the County of Macomb has gotten together with the veteran services of the tri-county areas and actually thought about crowdfunding in order to increase revenues into the veteran services. Just a thought. But like I say, Kevin Evans is doing a great job at Martha T. Berry. I look forward to the presentation.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak?
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Salyers, 14206 La Cavera Drive, Sterling Heights. The reason I'm getting up here is a little add-on to what Pat was talking about. Some of us may take and would say, hey, well, Ann Arbor has a 4-star. Let's just go out to Ann Arbor. Well, let's go to Saginaw. The problem is what about the people that can't afford to do that? Okay, that's a long drive, and some people just don't have transportation. So we need to do something about this, and send the message up there and say, hey, get this changed. These are our veterans that have fought for the country, wrote you a blank check for their life. Take care of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close public participation. Number 6, department recommendations. Budget amendment, Macomb Community Action Children and Family Services calendar year grant increase. Gary Cutler. There he is.
Thank you. In your packet, you have what the Emergency Food and Shelter is calling Phase 34. It is some funding. We've traditionally gotten funding for emergency food and shelter in phases. The last phase we got was supposed to have ended 3/31 of 17. And this phase, that phase was extended, and this phase is going to be overlapping the other phase. And since it's additional funds coming to the county, we've come before the board to ask your approval to receive this money and to spend it.
All right, thank you very much. Chair needs a motion. We have a motion by Leonetti, support by Lucido. Commissioner Leonetti.
I have no questions. I'm making a motion to approve the recommendation forward.
All right. Anyone else? Anyone have any comments? Gary, one question. This phase 34 and phase 35, that all the funds must be spent by January 31st, 2018.
That is correct. It's actually 33 and 34 that have to be spent by then.
This is kind of odd to see if we return $5 or more, then that's going to eliminate us from phase 35. If we don't spend it, then
First of all, we have historically spent the money in the past. There was money that was returned because of the documentation. We have reviewed. We submit when FEMA gets its package from us. It's banker boxes full of detail. There were some bills in there in the past that they in final reviewing had rejected, et cetera. That was back when we did utilities. So going forward, we've taken our funds specifically in rented mortgage and food assistance. Okay. So we do not expect to have any issues with the expenditures going forward.
All right, I just want to make sure that everybody was aware of how tight this is run. Any other comments or questions? We have a motion and support. All in favor, please vote. Thank you, Gary. Number 7, budget review. 7A, Martha T. Berry, Medical Care Facility. Kevin Evans.
Kevin hasn't been here for review. He's going to give a short review first, then do his budget.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Kevin, could you turn your mic on?
Yes. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. So which one am I up there?
My understanding is you're going to give us a little bit of a review and then get into your budget details.
Yes,
correct?
thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct.
right.
I was asked to just give a brief update before I do that, so here we go. I'm pleased to say that after 6 years of being a one-star facility, we are now a 3-star according to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. We continue to be that through this year. That will be frozen while they change their system, so we're going to be that for a while. Our goal is to get to a 4 or a 5-star in 2 years, but I'm pleased that we are headed in the right direction. Also, we have the National Research Corporation do an external review. The forms for this survey come directly from the National Research Corporation to the residents and family members and to our employees. they get they each get one that gets turned back in anonymously. But if you take a look at our family and resident satisfaction first, you can see that we're improving in every area. Would we recommend as a place to live? We went from 84% to 91.7%. Management responsiveness also increased. You also see staff confidence, then we can have trust in them. That's also increased, as well as staff explaining things understandably. We're not where we want to be on this, but we're headed in the right direction. I'm pleased to show that we're making positive improvements on that according to the families. Also, according to our staff, job satisfaction went from 41% to 50.9%, according to the same satisfaction. We have more metrics than that, but I just want to give you a high-level view on that. Our census does continue to be low, as is reflected in the budget when we get to that. And we did anticipate that, as we had talked about earlier this year. We're still roughly 8% better than the rest of the county. And as we talked about, some of the factors include new and remodeled buildings, assisted living creating some more market competition, as well as pilot payment projects and insurance prohibitions for us being a one-star. We're pleased to say that that's gone, and we're beginning to reconnect with some of the affordable care, accountable care organizations to begin working with them on some of that. Our current projects, as we talked about, our engineering study for the generator is almost complete. It's 95% complete. We have door access control for security for our residents, as well as active shooter, some of the new emergency preparedness requirements. Right now, we've had it a third of the way installed. The infrastructure's installed. We'll be putting the doors in the next few months. Our call light system is in progress as well. Our kitchen and dining renovation, I'm pleased to say that we're moving in a great direction on that. We should have some drawings in the next month or two that I'll bring to the commissioners to show you where we're headed with that as well. We also recognize that part of the active shooter and security is the video monitoring upgrade. We're going to be using the same video systems and platforms that the county has, so we can cross-connect. So if the county or the sheriff's department needs access to our cameras, they can get that. Also want you to know we're taking a conservative approach to remodeling. We believe that part of the competition, being a 17-year-old building with all the new facilities that we have going around the competition, we need to do a facelift, but we're also only doing that with money that we have. So when you see at the end of the year, you'll see more investment coming out of our cash fund, our cash balance. We're doing that, but we're only doing that as we're able to do that. Okay. As it relates to our budget, our budget is fairly self-evident. We had the first full year to be able to look at our actual expenses, and we noticed that we've had some ability to curb some costs. We're bending some cost curve in some areas. You'll also see, because of our anticipated census reduction continuing, that our revenue is somewhat depressed from this year as far as expectations go. I don't believe I need to take a deep dive in it unless the commissioners have any questions on that.
It says no speakers, but Commissioner Drollet.
Yeah, I didn't know if you're asking for a question about the wages, or if you're finished with your presentation, you're asking for questions in general.
I'm finished with my presentation.
Okay. My basic question is, is my understanding the county does not provide general funds to Martha T. Is that a correct assessment?
It is correct.
Okay. Then I guess my question is, what benefits does the county provide to Martha T?
That's a very good question. We still work with the county on the pension. They manage that pension. We provide the money into that pension, but we still have some people on the old pension system. We work as far as the county provides some education. We work together on education on some of that. We also have some cost savings with bidding, for example, with the video program. The county had already had a contract with a couple of vendors, and because we didn't have to go and rebid that, they allowed us to use the same contract. We actually had a cost savings on that, on the preparation of that. So those are some of the areas. We also work with F&O on, they do a great program on utilities. So we do a direct cost pass-through on the utilities, but we use the agreements that the county has in F&O. Those are just some of the areas. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it helps answer. I'm just wondering, because the county doesn't provide direct financial support, why is there a relationship at this point?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Commissioner Drolet. We exist because the county asks us to. We are a safety net for those that can't provide care for themselves. And under Public Act 280, we only are in existence because the county has need of a county medical care facility. It is important that we have that safety net because there are so many financial models that are based on Medicare and private pay. The people that aren't cared for are those that can't afford to, and their health are failing. So the county, in its wisdom many years ago, long before I got here, decided to have a county medical care facility. That is the social safety net. The relationship is because of that. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think it is. It would, though, it's still perplexing, though, if we are a facility in some respects of last resort for those who can't afford other options, but we're not providing financial support. Would that continue to exist if, for example, the Martha T, if you guys decided to spin off, if you're already being funded under your current model, using your current revenues that you currently get, is there really a benefit? I can understand why Martha T started, by the county, and it was a time when the county was providing, direct financial support and that sort of thing. But I just, wondering if that's history now and no longer relevant. It's an interesting part of the Martha T history, but not necessarily relevant to moving into the future.
I believe, Commissioner, it's entirely up to the commissioners here, but if you're asking my opinion, it is profoundly important that we remain related to the commissioners and the county. We have an advantage being that social safety net as being a Class 3 facility. What that means is we have a little bit more reimbursement on the Medicaid side of it to be able to provide for services to those that can't provide care for themselves. In other business models, they require you to go after the Medicare dollars, which are the higher dollars. And that's a Class 1 facility, both the for-profit and not-for-profit facilities go there. If we were to, and I'll get to another thing that you said there, but if we were to lose that, the county would lose $3 million in direct funds coming directly to the facility because of the reimbursement model.
Just real quick, the Class 3, does a Class 3 mean that it's a government entity? Is that what the Class 3 means, or what?
Class 3 is a designation of a county medical care facility. Yes.
Okay, so that designation is specific to being directly either owned or affiliated in some capacity with a county.
We are affiliated because the county wished us to be. To go back to what you had said, if we chose to spin off, we couldn't actually.
I see.
We're not our own entity in that respect. We are a uniquely presented component of the county. But if the county chose to not have us, then the county would have to make that decision. We could not do that.
Okay, but if the county made that decision, you're saying that you would not qualify for certain funds.
We would be converted to a Class 1 facility, which would lose about $3.6 million.
Okay. Okay, that helps me a lot. I appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
My privilege, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you. I'm looking at the budget, if I could, and I have some questions. In 2016, the actual total revenues were $31,300,000. For 2018, it's recommended that the total revenue would be $26,129,000. That's about a $5 million difference.
Yes.
That's 26 million.
Correct. Yeah, 26 million. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's $5 million difference, and that's what I want to focus on. Why is it anticipated that in 2018? And here's what I want to point out: in 2015, it was $23 million, and then we jumped almost $8 million in 2016, and now in 2016. Going to 2018, we're dropping $5 million. Can you explain that?
I can.
Okay, please.
It is we received in that time, and we have in the last couple of years, something called certified public expenditure.
Okay.
Steve Schmiegel could probably spend a little bit of time talking about that, but essentially what happened is we pre-funded certain things that allowed us to take an expense for that. And as a government entity, when you exceed the amount of money that comes in, the federal government gives you some of that back, about 65%.
Okay.
So of that $16 million roughly, we over the few years after we had that expense, had that money come back. Now, because that money has to be audited, we don't include that in our budget because it's not certain that we get to keep that money. It's only after the Medicaid budget is audited.
Okay.
Now, we did have that audited in 2015, and that's real money. That's money, cash that actually came in. We had money coming in 2016 and this year as well. We did not include it in the budget because it's not going to be long-standing. We're having that as additional revenue. If we can use that for capital improvements, we're going to do that. We do represent the money coming in on our financials, but we don't budget it because we aren't sure that we get to keep it.
Okay.
I'll give you a specific example. This year, we had, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, about $330,000 clawed back on the audit. Is that correct? Okay. So even though we had the money come in, we had to give some of it back because there were certain expenses that they said, no, you're not allowed to do that.
Okay. Well, let me just follow up. Like, if I look at like your recommended revenues and then your recommended expenditures, I mean, you're showing you're going to break even. But you know, when you look at like 2015, it actually operated at a loss. Are we, with what you just explained, and I sort of understand some of it, is there any anticipation that we're going to operate at a loss in 2018?
No. We will not operate at a loss in 2018. The reason we operated at a loss then was we had to take, there was a GASB, was it 85, 86 and 87? Steve? Here you are.
They had to record some liabilities for retiree health care in that year, so there's some GASB adjustments related to retiree health care, which also kind of ties into that revenue increase. They were able to take credit for their portion of the liability when we did the bonding.
Okay. I get that part of it. Okay. In terms of revenue increases, then, you don't know, I mean, you don't think we'll get back up to the 31 million mark at all?
Oh,
I mean, no. It'll be
Not
about
in the next couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Answer some of my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Happy to talk with you offline if you'd like some more.
This is very different from when years ago when we were subsidizing Martha T to the tune of about $5 to $8 million a year. That's when changes occurred. Thank you, Commissioner Kleinfeld. Are you? I withdrew. Thank you, Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for you. Looking at the budget, does it, the lawsuit, I believe Martha T. Berry won a lawsuit and some funds came in, correct?
Oh, against the state? Yes, that actually happened a couple of years ago. Actually, that was a 10-plus year challenge, and that money came in last year and was transferred to our accounts last year. And in working with the county commissioners, we're using that money specifically to help with our capital improvements.
How much money was that?
That was 935 roughly.
I thought it was millions. Steve, can you help me out? There was a lawsuit for, if I'm not mistaken, $9 million I thought that was coming back.
Not that I'm aware of.
At one time, there was a lawsuit that was filed, and there was anticipated funds coming back, so maybe it ended up being $900,000. I mean, there was a talk of $9 million. Anybody who was on the board, they was supposed to, with Medicaid money, that was supposed to come back. Commissioner Tocco, you remember it all?
Commissioner Carabelli, I remember numbers, but I don't think it was.
And there was discussion as far as where's that money going because of the capital improvements that the county did.
Right.
And it's like, is that coming back to the general fund because we were putting money into it? You remember that discussion?
I can't address that directly. It's important that you know that once that's not a swinging door. CMS requires that any money that comes back to the facility has to stay with the facility. So that's why we have to use that. If it goes out of that, then we actually have to reduce our expense, and then you have to pay it back.
Okay,
Okay.
so those funds though are allocated just in your fund balance at the end? Where did that show up, that additional funds? What year did that show up on your,
2016.
so 2016, your fund balance end of year, that's where the money should be in that line item?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and is it, do you know?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers that I know of, do we have a motion to receive and file? We have a motion to receive and file by Drollet, support by Kraft. Any other comments or questions? We have a motion and support. Please vote. This is to receive and file. Thank you, Kevin. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now my favorite.
Let me do my, if I could briefly do a spiel before.
Miss Rios.
Before Laura comes up. So you can find the veterans budget on page D20. The budget's going up about $120,000 from 2017 to 2018, primarily because of the addition of 2 counselor positions.
Right.
The counselor 1 and the counselor 2, and Laura can speak more directly to that. You'll also see quite a large increase in the property tax millage, or property tax revenue. That's because the millage went from .04 mils to .069 mils,
Right.
effective with this December's levy, which funds the 2018 budget. So that's primarily what's going on there. You'll see a very large item. The largest line item in the operating side is in supplies and services. It's about $275,000. There's 2 items in that line item there are 2 items within that category that total $235,000. There's $115,000 for burial allowance and $120,000 for we call special needs, but it's assistance for veterans when they come in for assistance with their utilities or purchasing an appliance of some kind or some other kind of assistance. Again,
Right.
I'll have Laura come up and explain her budget in more detail.
All right, thank you, Steve. Laura?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay. So my budget's looking a little bit different for next year because we got the millage. So it goes into effect December. So next year I'll have the increase. So as far as everything pretty much stays the same, except that we'll have more money going into a few more categories. More funding for operations, more funding hopefully for employees, and we'll start there. So my projected plan was to work on 6 projects, and we'll start implementing those 6 projects next year, which is hiring 2 new people.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for your budget presentation. You mentioned that the changes we'll see as a result of the increase in the millage will be some new employees and some new operations. What will veterans see? I mean, how will their service be better? I mean, we'll have more employees, we'll have bigger operations, but what will that mean to the typical veteran who uses the services? What's going to improve in their lives?
Good question. So what I'm doing right now is we support the boot camp, we support Veterans Treatment Court, we support with transportation to the VA Medical Center. So right now that's what we do, but we can support better the Veterans Boot Camp. So right now there's no case management on the unemployed veterans afterwards. There's a little, but not a lot, because everybody's volunteering to do a boot camp once a month. And that's those are the Michigan Works employees, and they help the veterans for a 1 whole week program. And then when it's done, they now have to catch up with their other job, with their Michigan Works job. So what our goal is to take one of the new positions is going to be to case manage the unemployed veterans. So that's going to be, I see a better case management, where more intense case management, where if it's taking somebody 3 or 4 weeks to get a job after the boot camp, hopefully we can narrow that down even better. And the success rate is like 78% right now, within 3 weeks after the boot camp.
So is the boot camp oriented toward job skills primarily?
It is. It is. It's at Michigan Works. It is getting them ready for employment.
Okay.
It is. They go over like 15 to 20 items during that week. So it's not only resumes, it's interviewing, it's everything.
So the primary benefit from the increased millage will be unemployed veterans will have.
That's just one.
Okay.
That's
one
just
of them.
one.
All right.
We
go
had
to the
6.
others.
We have 6.
All right. What are the other benefits that you'll
Okay,
actually
so
see?
that was one of our projects that we were going to do. So better support the Veterans Treatment Court. So right now I am going over to one of our courts, because we have 2, and I'm going over there every single week to help case manage the participants in the Veterans Treatment Court. I don't have somebody going over to the afternoon session with Judge Swatowski, because that's at the same time as our trust fund, and I have conflicting meetings. So I can't be there at the same time. So by hiring another person, we'll have another service officer that can also case manage the veterans at the Veterans Treatment Court, the other court. So that's another project.
What do they get out of the Veterans Treatment Court?
What do they get out of it?
What benefit comes out of it?
Let's see, readjustment. That's what they get. So the veterans that go through Veterans Treatment Court are usually somebody who got pulled over for a DUI, it's usually they're in the boot camp because either a drug conviction or a alcohol conviction, but they were arrested for something. So instead of going to jail and just paying a fine and coming back the next year, it's PTSD treatment. It's getting them it's a 2-year program to get them their treatment that they desperately need, so we don't see them back, whether it's the Vietnam vets or the younger vets.
And currently, we're not able to provide that treatment at an adequate level?
Oh, no, we do the best we can. No, the veteran treatment courts have both been working, and they've been going on since, I think, 2011 here. But I am now involved with the one in Clinton Township with Judge Fuca. I'm basically like, I don't go to the other court full time. Mm-hmm. They meet every single week, so I'm more on standby.
I guess I'm wondering, I realize you'll be able to do more or have more resources to do more, because I'm hoping to find out how that translates to something, so they're going to get into a program more quickly. I mean, if we have been keeping up with the need, what benefit then would be having more case managers? If we haven't been, how will our ability to keep up with their needs translate to in their lives?
Well, here's another example. Okay, we have 54,000 veterans in our county, and we see about 650 people a month, but that's based on how many people I have in my office that are trained to take appointments. So the more people I have that are trained to take appointments, the more people we can have come through our office. So obviously we don't see 54,000 people a year, because not everybody needs to be seen once they get their disability, once they're okay and they don't need an increase. But it's doing these outreaches, going to these speaking engagements, and tracking all the stuff that we do there. But the more people we have in our office, the more veterans we can reach, because ultimately my goal is to turn over or meet every single veteran in our county.
Have we had to turn away people because we can't have meetings with them under our current?
No, we don't turn away people ever.
We just haven't outreached as much.
We just, let's say when a few years ago, they could have had like a month wait for an appointment. Okay. So then we came up with a solution where we'll have a walk-in day. So we have one location that has 2 walk-in days now. So if somebody needs to be seen right away because they have to be seen, then they can come to our walk-in. Our walk-in location. So we're doing the best we can, but we can always do better with more, and we can reach more people.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to, I'd like to be able to explain to people, they say, oh, we increased the funding for veterans. I'd like to be able to explain tangibly that means shorter wait times or a better level of service, a newer level of service. It sounds like that's the things you're trying to do. I just want to make sure it's not that we just hired more people or something. I mean, I want to see how it translates to people on the ground.
Okay, so it translates into dollars. So my quarterly paper that I give you guys quarterly, which isn't part of this, I track the money that the veterans get awarded from their VA disability claim. I track how much money that is coming back into our county. So that's one way we can track us doing our good job. By
will they get
them
more money
receiving
though?
money.
Will they get more money in the disability checks or anything like that?
Well, if they do the
better?
claim themselves, it has been proven that by having a service officer help them with the claim, which we're free of charge, we do not charge them anything, they will usually get more money, and they usually can avoid an appeal, which takes 5 to 10 years.
Okay, that could be very helpful. Is there a way that we can track that so next year we can say, last year this was the number of people who had to appeal, and this year the appeal rate went down 20%, or the success rate went up as a result of this, and here's how much it went up?
Tracking appeals. Until the VA changes how they track appeals, I don't know how I'm going to track appeals. I can track, right now what I track on the quarterly sheet is the people who walk in our door, which are, we track what they're there for, whether it's a claim, whether it's burials, what it's for emergent need requests, which is our grants. And we track the money that they awarded.
You know then that there are fewer appeals if we don't have anyone tracking appeals.
Well, I know I still have a caseload. I still see veterans. I was just at the VA this morning in front of a judge.
Right, but
for the appeal, so.
You noted that.
Yes, and it takes 5 years to get to the judge.
The more involvement with a caseworker has, the more likely there is to be, less likely there is to be appeal, and the more likely they are to have success in accessing what they're entitled to.
Correct.
I guess it would be great to be able to quantify that at the end of a year, saying, all right, we increased the millage by X, and the result of which was the success rate for applying for services went up by X%, or or there's a fewer number of appeals, or something that we can say that that it's kind of easy to measure the benefit to the end
Sure.
beneficiary.
I will try to. I'll have to think that one through to see if I can track appeals, or is there going to be a way to track appeals? So right now, what I'm tracking on my metrics that I believe I can control. Okay, there's certain things I can't control, and these are the things that I feel I can possibly control. The number of claims that are fully developed, that's the number of claims we submit every year. Number of veterans contacted, that's people who walk on our doorstep. Outreach presentations to groups. So the more outreaches equals more people I can come in contact with. Number of veterans per VSO. This is not a number. The VA comes out with that, and that's on the gross distributions of funds that they publish at the end of May every year for the previous fiscal year. So they basically come out with, this is how many veterans we have, and this is how much money we send to Macomb County. So I basically divide that by how many service officers we have and kind of compare the counties that are next to us. So basically, it's kind of like caseload, but it's not caseload.
Okay. I mean, I realize that being able to outreach to more veterans could potentially have benefits. But if we just outreach to veterans and they don't get anything more, and we just gave them a brochure and shook their hand, I mean, it would be nice to know that actual benefits hitting the veterans. Outreach is I would imagine a step to that end result. And it would be great to be able to know what that end result was. So we outreach to more veterans. So what? Did they get more services? Did they have better, shorter wait times for a service? Those are the things that I think matter most. And it'd be great if we could track those and be able to explain to the citizens of Macomb County, you're paying more for veteran services, but here's how the veterans are benefiting.
I can track wait time for my
Okay,
office.
that would be great.
That's something I
If
can
we could
track.
reduce wait time substantially, then that makes sense.
Now, wait time at the VA hospital? No, that's
Well,
a different
no,
story.
I get that.
No, I can't
All right,
track that. So.
But in the things that we can provide, if we can show
Sure.
shorter wait times, a greater percentage of success in accessing benefits, a greater number of people having getting involved with the benefits they're entitled to. Those are the things that are tangible, I guess, at least to me.
Okay.
And those things, that sounds like those are a plan to get there. You're putting more people in the place, and you're doing more outreach, and you've sounds like a plan to get there. It'd just be great to be able to measure it and what the results were in the end.
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I might, as the chairman of the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Drollet. Pat, can you step up to the microphone, please?
One of the benefits is, as we increase employees over there, or service officers, that wait time that used to be 6 weeks, 3 months, is now down to 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. If you're a veteran who's filing a claim for loss of hearing, 3 weeks might be okay. If you're a veteran who's just been diagnosed with cancer, 3 months could be a life sentence. The idea is to get them in there, get the claims filed, and even when the claim's filed and they get their disability, they still have the option of filing for increases in that and appeals. So we need the people in the office to represent these guys and get them taken care of, get their files cleaned, their claims filed in a timely manner, and get them the services and the benefits that deserve through their service sooner rather than later, because of those cases where they may not have a lot of time. And the widows are in the same boat. We deal with the widows, trying to get them their dependents indemnity compensation if the husband dies from a service-connected disability. We don't want a widow out here living for 6 months with no income because she can't get in the office to see somebody.
So Pat, I guess what I'm getting at is exactly what you explained. It's not as important to me how many case managers there are if it's no improvement in if improvement times don't improve. But if more caseworkers mean that the wait times have been cut in half, that's the number I'm most interested in hearing.
Absolutely.
So to the extent that we can measure that and say, yes, we passed the millage and wait times were cut in half, there's a value. Adding caseworkers is a way to get there, but it's not the value. You know, the value is the service. Right. So thank you for that explanation, because I'm looking for those kind of, what do we get?
And the other benefit, the Veterans Relief Fund that the county oversees, that we oversee.
Right.
Which helps with the gas bills and the electric and the rent and the mortgage.
Okay. So a number,
Commissioner, there are a number of things that our veterans services do for our veterans that we sometimes don't hear about as much here in this.
Mr. Chairman, we can fix that
meeting.
by hearing about them,
and that's what we're doing.
Right, and what you've just described there, for example, if I could go back to taxpayers and say the millage went up, but there is a 25% increase in the amount of assistance given for electricity and this and that. You know, the results are easy to explain. You know, if I say the budget increased by X, well, who cares?
Right.
You know, did it mean anything to anybody?
I've been on the commission for 12 years, 15 years. When I started the relief fund, we would get 4 or 5 requests a year for electric, gas, and it would be $400, $500. That doesn't happen anymore. There's 5 or 6 cases every time we meet or more, and the requests now are for thousands of dollars.
So this, what we hope will happen then, first off, I don't know if we're meeting those needs currently. Are we short of funds in those arenas? And if we are, or if we're not, the new resources available, you know, will help us meet a need that we can't currently keep up with. I guess that's, you know, the question. If we're already meeting the needs, you know, but
we're keeping up with it, and we're trying to be as frugal as we can with the taxpayers' dollars. It's a real hard thing to want to take care of that veteran and want to be frugal with the county dollars. If it was up to me and it was my money personally, every guy who walked through the door that needed help, I would help him.
Yeah.
We have to make those decisions every week when we meet, or every 2 weeks. It's not always an easy task, but if the money's not there, then we definitely can't help.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your latitude and thank you for that. And I guess I'm eager to hear the success stories as a result of the additional resources. And I hope that we're able to compile those in a way that's easy digestible, that people can say, we help more people. You know, here's how much more people were to help. So
In the last, since we started with the millage, we have definitely made improvements over there. Veterans will tell you they're getting better service and that things are better there.
I look forward to that, if, you know, that we can quantify that so it's easy to explain. I'm not trying to be critical of either of you, frankly. I just want to be able to explain easily what the benefit are to the actual citizen on the street, you know, the veteran on the street.
I think we're going to have to wait until some of the funds actually hit in order to quantify the
Right.
progress that the department is making.
In order to measure what the
And I
progress
think
was.
that we will be able to get the right metrics to show exactly where the funding is improving, the reaction time and so on and so forth for the veterans and veteran services.
Well, I look forward to that, and I'm glad that,
Certainly urge all of you to come and spend a day with us.
Yeah.
well, thank you very much, both of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next on the hit parade is Marv Sauger. Marv.
Yeah, Laura, I just want to ask a question. It won't take that long. Do you have any use, or do you use any county vehicles for the veterans for any purpose? And if so, what is the condition of them?
I do not have any county vehicles. We actually have a vehicle that was provided by DAV, and what happens is it's turned over to the VA. So we have now a VA vehicle. It's I guess funded through the VA now. DAV, Disabled American Veterans, purchases the vehicle for our transportation back and forth to the VA hospital, and the VA hospital maintains the vehicle. So they pay the gas, they pay for the maintenance, they pay for the upkeep of the vehicle. The only thing I have to do is provide volunteer drivers. And it's got a big, it's a Ford Flex, and it's got a nice bright neon green that says
Okay.
DAV all over it. So yeah, how you like my driving, called DAV. So, but I don't have any county vehicles.
Okay, so you're satisfied with that type of transportation?
I could use a bigger vehicle, but I am waiting for a bigger vehicle, and that's coming from DAV.
Thank you.
Hopefully it'll be a tracked vehicle. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Laura. I just have a question regarding the, maybe this was for Steve, but back to the actual budget numbers for a second. You've averaged about, I don't know, around 200,000 in supplies and services for the last couple of years, but we're requested, last year was requested 300 and this year is requested 274. So I'm just wondering what, what we see as an increase for supplies and services coming up this year is.
Which line item is that?
So supplies and services, the budget's going up about $7,000
Well,
from 267 to 274.
Yeah, but it's going up, but however, right now it's estimated that the full year is 188, the last year was 194, the last year was 204. So I guess I'm just kind of going on an average, even though this year is still estimated, as to why, like the actual used in 15, 16, and estimated for 18 or 17 is all around 200,000, but we're still put, 274,000 in. Is there a?
Fund. Okay, that includes our fund.
That includes what? I'm sorry, what?
That includes our special need fund, our fund that we use to pay for emergent needs of veterans. So that fluctuates. I believe that includes that fund. Correct? It falls under that category.
So of that 274, as I mentioned earlier, we've got about 115,000 in burial allowance and another 120,000 in the special needs fund or their emergent needs. So we're putting an estimate, and Laura's putting an estimate of what they need. If they don't spend it, it goes right into
rolls
the
back
fund
in.
balance. Again, the general fund doesn't contribute any money to this program. It's all funded through a tax levy.
That's right. I just
Okay.
wanted to see what you saw was the,
Yeah.
the increase this year, and to just see more of those type of.
It goes up and down every year
All right.
based
Thank
on the emergent need. I can't
No.
put a cap on him, I mean, on the Veterans Commission when they hear their cases.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Just to clarify with respect to the budget and the increases, you give us a quarterly report.
Yes, ma'am.
And in that quarterly report, you track new cases for different things. You also track the amount of money that has come in from previous cases, so you see, actually quantifiably, you see whether or not that goes up or down, correct?
The awards.
Right.
Right, so that's a measurement, because you're also tracking the number of veterans, so that in and of itself is a measurement as to, okay, the taxpayers are paying this much more, but this much more has come into the county because of that increase. So I would think once everybody gets used to those quarterly reports, it might be easier to understand the benefit of the extra. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Easy.
Talked about the bust of the. There was a time when the VA, our Veterans Office, had a problem transporting people down to the VA hospital, and so SMART stepped in and provided some bus service for us because we wanted them to, because people in the north end didn't use SMART bus as much, and I had many constituents who were having a hard time getting down there. So we found a way to get them down here, and then they were routed from here down there, and I thought SMART was helping us do that. Are they still helping us bring people from the north end down here? And then I thought they were carrying the next leg down to Detroit. And if they aren't, we got to figure that. We can probably fix that pretty quick with a few calls to some people, I would think.
Okay, about 15 years ago, we had a contract, I believe, with Macomb Community Action to provide transportation to the VA hospital, to provide transportation to the VA hospital.
Yes.
One of our pickup locations for our transportation is at the VFW at 24 and Van Dyke. The one thing that we can't do is we can't pick up, because this is a government vehicle provided by the VA, we cannot pick up anybody from their home. They have to make it to a pickup location. So when it comes into, well, I can't get this person to the pickup location, or they have oxygen, they can't ride in that car. If they're in a wheelchair, they can't ride in that car. So they have some they can't take a caregiver in that car. So they have very specific rules on who can ride and how you ride. So if that falls and they can't take that transportation, I've driven a veteran to the hospital. Pat Daniels has driven a veteran to the hospital.
There has to be a government vehicle, though, you said, or they can't. I'm not, what's the?
Well, SMART, I have talked to SMART. SMART has, we've talked to Fred from SMART, and we've had a nice conversation with him.
Well, he's a nice guy, but did we get results? That's the.
Well, they can't take them from their door. They can take them from their door to our pickup location.
Right.
That they can do.
But they can't take him from all the way down?
But if the veteran is on oxygen or in a wheelchair, they can't go on my transportation because the VA won't allow it.
And
because we have volunteer drivers.
Well, that's not.
So that's one of their rules.
Well, that rule probably needs to be changed. It sounds like to me. It doesn't seem to make much sense as to why they're doing it. But I don't fully understand that. But we'll hold that up. But I think that's an area I'd like to help with if we need to look into VA rules about why we can't do certain things that make sense. I've got, crippled up veterans up there that had issues, and I thought they were being handled. I haven't heard too many complaints recently, but if they can't.
If you do get a complaint, please let me know.
I do. I called.
Okay.
All right.
Because I'm trying to fix the transportation problem.
All right,
and one thing that we did do a few months ago is make a flow chart for transportation and identified every single free service, SMART service, VA service, and also the VA. If they're service connected and in a wheelchair, and they're more than 30% service connected, the VA will go get them. And bring them door to door and pay for that.
Okay.
So, but there's all these little And if this happens, then B can happen.
Okay.
But there's too many moving parts with it, so it's very hard to fit everybody.
You're the manager of the department, you're the director of the department. How much caseload are you working with? I mean, you should be, when you mentioned you're in the courts doing casework, like little flag went up, I'm like, what do you, how much time are you spending doing that? And
Okay, so
I know you're the only one that can do it.
no. So basically, when I was a service officer, I saw veterans every day, and then I became the director. I did not see any new veterans after I became the director. So the cases that I still have are the cases that are in appeal from 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, the one
all
from
right.
today is from 2011 that I started in 2010.
So you're not spending a lot of time in the courts then, really?
Well,
How many-
I don't
how-
want to give that case up because
Well,
that's the case I
understand that.
started.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
want you to either, because that continuity is
Yeah.
important to the person.
It takes 15 minutes in front of the judge.
Okay.
That's it.
Figures.
And I've never lost a case either. I'm just saying.
And maybe
Very good.
getting back to that emergent appeals with that budget number that Chairman Smith was asking about, maybe we need to break that out into line items, individual line items, and lump them together. I think that might help provide some clarity, in the future, so we don't have.
I just had a widow awarded over 100,000. So
Awesome. That's great.
she waited since 2010.
Excellent.
But,
Perfect.
why did she have to wait though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Last on the list is Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm echoing some of the sentiments of some of the other commissioners. I'll start with what Commissioner Brown said. The line item would certainly help. And I'm going to start off, when Steve came up to present this, he said the big change would be supplies and services, and he mentioned the two numbers, 115 and 120. And of course, Chairman Smith was concerned about why did supplies and services go up in your expenditures. And the problem we have as commissioners is, we see supplies and services, but we don't have below that category a breakdown of what that is. Now, if that's like what Mr. Daniels is saying, that you're going to give people help with electrical issues and other issues, that would certainly make us feel better when we see that number go up. Because we know, going along with what Commissioner Drolet said, that this is what the millage was passed for. We're increasing this expenditure because we're able to get more services to vets. That's a quantifiable thing that we can go back to our constituents and say, yeah, supplies and services went up, but that's not pencils or desks or computer software. That's actual services to vets. So I guess maybe the question's to you, Mr. Chair. I know we sent an email, and I know we are trying to request some of this line item breakdown on some of these things. It would certainly help us out. Where are we on that?
We're working on it. We'll talk about it.
Okay. One last question, too. When you give us your quarterly reports, and I know you gave us one recently, the supplies and services, last time I looked at your quarterly report, it was a lot of contacts. I remember different contacts and stuff like that. Could there or is there a breakdown of those services that are provided? So in other words, if I add up your quarterly reports, I would see $274,950 spent more or less on services. Would I see that in your reports?
Well, actually, in the quarterly report, what we have broken down is how many burials we paid, and that's how many we paid per quarter. And then we also have another breakdown on how many veterans came to the trust fund or the relief fund. So that is a breakdown. But I don't think we broke down that category into dollar value.
Okay.
So I can add the dollar value to that.
Well, at least in a sense,
I do at the end of the year in the remarks
on the final
section.
quarterly report. Okay, that's fine. I just want to keep track, like Mr. Daniels says. I mean, if you're helping out folks with electrical bills and stuff like that, veterans coming into you, we like to keep track on how much is being spent on that, and it's easier if we have some type of line item on that than just seeing it as supplies and services. All right. All right, thank you.
Fair
thank
enough.
you, Mr. Chair.
Chair is still waiting for a motion to receive and file. We have a motion by Lucido, support by Kleinfeld. Chairman, Commissioner Toko.
Thank you. Laura, can you just go over your capital outlay item and what's expected for next year?
Capital outlay. I'd have to get back with you.
Okay.
Because Off the top of my head, it's 14,000. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what it is for.
Okay, if you could let us know. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld? No. On second round? Okay, we have anyone else wishing to speak, since this machine is really starting to get on my nerves. We have a motion and support to receive and file. All in favor?
Aye. Oh, sorry.
Can you vote, please? Thank you. Welcome to the new millennium. Press a button and lose your mind. Laura, well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That being said, Laura, I'd like you to get involved in this resolution that we have coming up next, and cram it in somebody's ear. Number 8, resolution urging the Detroit Veterans Hospital to improve service. We have a motion by Sauger, support by Carabelli. Any comments or questions? Commissioner Drolet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Do you have any idea why it's so bad in Detroit compared to Ann Arbor or Saginaw? Is there some secret everyone knows, or is there some reason why it's that bad?
Can I cuss?
No. Yes.
We'd prefer you didn't.
They don't give a shit. Yeah.
There's just no incentive for them to provide good service? They don't, is that what it is?
I mean, some of the doctors have really, I go to Yale Clinic. So there's 2 clinics associated with Detroit VA Hospital. So I probably think most of the majority of our guests here today, they probably use the VA Detroit Hospital in Detroit, where I live north of Hall Road, so I go to Yale Clinic, and it's closer for me to go to Yale Clinic. I don't have any problems going to Yale. But when I do go down to Detroit, depending on what I need, it's, it's like you're a second-class citizen.
So you think it's really just bad management, essentially? Because I would imagine the Yale people have no more
They're
dollar
contracted.
incentive or something.
No, they're contracted. They're from Port Huron Hospital. They're McLaren. They give a rat's butt.
Okay, and they're not contracted down at the, they're government
Oh,
employees?
they're all government employees.
Oh, that explains it. Thank you.
It's just a different attitude.
Well, Laura,
I'm sorry, I cussed.
give somebody's ear your attitude.
We do that all the
We
time.
have a motion and support. Commissioner Leonetti was on here.
No, I withdrew. It was a
Okay,
typo.
thank you. Please vote. We have a motion and support. Please vote. And please take this vote and stick it in somebody's ear.
Thank you.
And Pat, you can help push too.
They know I'm not going anywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Number 9, correspondence.
Move to receive and file both of them.
We have a motion to receive and file both of them. Do we have support? Support by Romano. All in favor? Please vote. God. Thank you very much. That ends the Health and Human Services portion of this. Commissioner Brown?
Very good. We'll carry on. We have a budget reviews from the Department of Planning and Economic Development. Director's here to present, or along with
I'll give my
our Apple's
standard
finance
brief
director.
overview. So the budget is, for the planning department, is on page C51 of the budget. The total budget for 2018, it's being recommended by the executive's office, is just shy of 3.5 million. It's 3,491,000. It's about a $93,000 increase over the prior year. There's essentially 2 big things going on, I guess, for lack of a more formal term. There's a one position being added to the budget. It's an associate planner position at a total cost of just shy of $82,000, including benefits, and a $40,000 increase in contract services, which is being earmarked for a countywide Parks and Recreation master plan.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? What that?
So contract services increased 40,000. That's earmarked to be spent on a countywide Parks and Recreation master plan. JP can go into far more detail on that line item than I. And there's also, they're adding one position. It's an associate planner position for a cost of just shy of $82,000. There's a small increase in conferences and training of about $2,500, about an $8,000 increase in supplies and services, which is online services and some local travel, mileage essentially. So with that, I'll turn it over to JP.
Did anyone have any questions of what Director Schmiegel had to say? Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present the fiscal year 2018 budget from Planning and Economic Development. Aside from a handful of commissioners, some other directors, and the Office of the County Executive, I was told I have 5 minutes. So here we go. Main thing that we're looking at as far as our proposed budget, when we look first and foremost at positions, as Director Schmiegel highlighted, the new position is the Associate Planner. We are targeting that position to be embedded in our Communications and Outreach group. We're looking not only at increase in our intergovernmental coordination on major planning and economic development projects related to the continuation of our F-35 efforts, and a lot of the outreach and coordination we're doing with career technical education, not only doing more standardized programming and highlighting of a lot of the CTE programs and talent development programs, but also looking at the whole notion how we're developing those collateral materials and portals to highlight these services and opportunities here in the county. I think it's done an incredible service to establish a better working rapport with our institutional partners on the educational side, and is actually opening up doorways to a number of the companies that are looking to invest in the county. This is something that we've really been challenged by our private sector partners, and opening up these channels not only through standard communications outreach and coordination is giving us the ability to really deploy a set of services and a more viable link to our economic development services, which is providing us with some great dividends. On the intradepartmental side, it's also going to provide us more opportunities to standardize the communication services that we're providing for departments in the county. Not only deploying things, whether it be Bryan Standards and Communications Task Force, but providing resources and tools, whether it be a press release app that we're developing in coordination with IT. Also looking at the whole notion of the way that we develop a unified brand similar to the types of efforts that our friends over in Oakland County and Kent County have been able to deploy, and really getting that image and really upping the game on that front. We're also looking at a reclassification for 2 associate planners in our department. In continual talks with Human Resources and our friends over at Finance, we're looking at establishing the parameters for an employee retention and professional development tract. Understanding that retention and ensuring that we can solidify the professionals that we have in our department to continue to grow and remain committed to some of these more long-term projects. We looked at the whole notion of how to incentivize individuals to get those professional certifications that are viewed as benchmarks in the fields of planning, economic development, GIS, and graphic design, to kind of highlight a few of those things. We've highlighted a number of those professional certifications and advanced degrees that would be of benefit not only to work that we're doing, but would give us the ability to bring a lot of those services that we've deployed traditionally through contractual services, but keep those services more in-house as we have more AICP planners, if we have more economic developers that are certified by the International Economic Development Council, which gives us those opportunities. On the operating expenses, as Steve highlighted, a few minimal increases. Online services is the highest one of note as we're looking to expand the utilization of our online databases and client management systems. We've really begun to automate and digitize a lot of the way that we're not only engaging clients but disseminating resources, whether it be from incentives that we provide or tailor-made portals where we can highlight, here are the services that our department provides, here are the resources that you can get from the state of Michigan, here's some workforce development elements. And as we've not only built those tools schools in conjunction with our friends over at IT, we really feel that we're cornering the market on a streamlined approach to disseminating the services that we provide in our department and how they directly impact business investment around the county, and we're really proud of those things. Out-of-state travel, the increase there is primarily from the fact we go on again, off again with our GIS user conference. Our friends over at Esri are pretty stubborn. They only have their conference in San Diego, and we cut it back to going once every other year. So just looking for a slight increase there to cover that cost. And then conferences and seminars are going to offset the coverage for those professional associations and continuing education credits as we look at that credentialing program. The last big ticket item that I wanted to highlight was our contractual services line item. Over the past 2 years, we've discussed with this board as this kind of being the programmatic fund for our budget, highlighting a number of priorities from each one of the work groups. This year, the increase in this fund comes from the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The reason we're asking for that increase is every 5 years under the Department of Natural Resources guidelines for parks, recreation, and open space planning, we need to update our plan. By updating the plan, we would make it the ability for us to draw down funds from not only the Department of Natural Resources, but obviously the DQ and other recreational related programming at the state level. This would not only ensure that we're up to the grant standards, but would be able to refresh and provide a more contemporary framework for where parks and recreation lies in Macomb County. We've itemized the rest of the funds and other initiatives that we're looking to chart out in the contractual services line item. And with that, I will yield to any questions.
Thank you, JP. The new position that you want to bring on, what is the plan specifically for him to coordinate with the schools and the CTEs and the employers? What model are you going to use to you know, it's a broad area. There's been a lot of talk about,
Yes, sir.
you know, the need to get more CTA kids in the workplace and how to do that. And there's a variety of models. How are we going to fit into that piece?
All the credit for this programming falls to Maria Zardes, who's our program manager of communications and outreach. Essentially, what we've built is a model that branches out from our National Manufacturing Day celebration. Because of that outreach, we've been able to establish standard relationships with each one of the 21 school districts in Macomb County and the MISD. On a regular basis, we are working at a task force level that brings in not only all of the superintendents, but also counselors and teachers to explore CTE programming on an ongoing basis and understand any deficiencies in career exploration and career pathways. Beyond that, on the economic development level, with our economic development staff being deployed in the field, meeting with no less than 400 Macomb companies every single year, we are pushing the whole notion of talent development and career technical education and linking employers to the educational field. What that has done is that has given us the ability to not only incubate creative ideas, whether it be apprenticeship programming, whether it be academy-based programming, which is giving kids in virtually every single school district in the county the ability to go in and see what manufacturing looks like, to see what professional services looks like, to look at a career pathway and exploration. And then we are now taking it to the next step where we're doing more work on the curriculum-based level. We're working right now with Romeo Community Schools on Ford Next Generation Learning, which is a full academy-based learning program that they're going to deploy over the next 2 years as they ramp up for the new high school in 2019. Myself and Vicki Rad have been working with the superintendent's office and all of the teachers at the high school, where we're not only going in and looking at occupations in our county, but we're also tracking emerging industry trends, trying to say, if a kid comes to you and says they want to be an engineer, what does that mean? How do they explore that career, and how can we link them to companies here in the county? The other part of this that is instrumental is the ISD. The MISD and Mike DeVault has been an amazing partner that has given us the ability to not only engage the educators, but more importantly, advocate at a higher level, whether it's at the state or federal level, for additional funding.
So the new position will be going to support that initiative 100%?
A portion of those responsibilities would be to supporting Maria's efforts
Would that
there.
be a promotion internally to move someone into that spot? And then, I mean, how is that going to work internally? Personally, going to creating this new position or hire this, so you're going to promote somebody from within, or has that been determined yet?
We'll probably look externally as we look at opening up some of the credentials, as bringing those individuals in.
And that raises the next question. You're creating a new incentive programming for getting more certifications in your department. But in the end, it's those are great because we've got talented people in that department, but they also have to be tied to their union wages and so forth like that. And mean, getting skills is one thing, but having money is another thing too. How is that going to work with are you in contact with our labor unions to make sure that they're coordinating with them in terms of how that all works to give additional, because like in the schools, you get incentivized to go get higher education degrees, you get more money for that.
We've been working extensively with both human resources and IT to understand that we follow all labor practices and that we have the necessary resources. We want these to not only be certified justifications based off of the recommendations that we bring to this board, but more importantly, each certification comes from a credentialed element in the field of practice. So it's just not we're saying, hey, go sit in this classroom for 8 hours and get this certificate. We're talking about national standards as far as how we can be better planners in the field, how we can be better economic developers, and that are viewed as industry-leading certifications, and then most importantly would follow all labor practices and rules here at the county.
Does your organization have enough breathing space to allow people to move up as their skills warrant themselves? I mean, are we?
With this recommendation that we're bringing to the board and with the changes that we're discussing with human resources with the class and compensation study, I believe that we are going to have not only the necessary leeway to provide individuals with those professional development opportunities, but more importantly, we're going to look at the whole notion of career development within our department. So it's just not someone coming in and saying, okay, you're only going to be an associate planner, or you're only going to be a graphic designer, or you're only going to be a senior planner. But as we can allow people to grow into these fields, I think that retention has done an incredible service to our department, as is evident by a lot of the program managers that we have on our team right now.
Okay. And the Parks Master Plan, it's to be rewritten. When do we expect that completed by?
Our objective would be, should we receive the funding, should we begin to get the assumption that we're going to receive the funding from the board, we would start drafting not only the contractual services items that we would look to do to bring in an external contractor to assist with that, but we'd also be looking at what we could deploy internally, whether it's not only through our department, obviously we would work with other internal partners, whether it be the Public Works, whether it be the Department of Roads, and whether it be facilities and operations to see what we could offset internally. The key objective with this is there's been changes not only into the DNR structure and the way that we can access funding, but there's also been other avenues of funding, whether it's the Iron Bell Trail Network, and we really want to standardize a lot of those programmatic buckets to better make it so that we can access those dollars, whether it be for acquisition, development, or special projects.
So setting up a master plan that'll tailor-make to integrate with our local communities as well as what we're doing. They'll set the groundwork for these grant applications.
Yes, sir.
The master plan is not the way to get that. It's a tool to get access to the money when we make applications, right?
Absolutely. So ultimately what it would do is if we would be able to finalize the plan in this next calendar year, we would make it so there wouldn't be a gap in that. If we complete the plan, which we feel that we undoubtedly will, in that calendar year, it will make sure it'll be seamless, and then we can continue to apply for DNR trust fund grants as a county alone or in joint applications with our communities as we've done year over year.
Thank you very much for answering my questions. Questions from the committee? I don't see anybody here. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so in the contract services, we have a 2017 actual, which is just like a halfway through the year. But what we don't have is the original 2017 budget. So the 2017 that says amended, that says that for every department. Steve, do you know, did we actually do any amending from our original budget? Or, you know what I mean, that actual is just halfway through the year. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, the original budget was 300,000.
Okay.
So
when we went from 2016 114 to 2017 291, were any of those one-time projects? Because did you talk to us last year about any one-time projects?
I know we added 100,000 for Protect and Grow, which JP is requesting to continue.
Okay, so that then
That
it's
was
not
the
a one-time, that's a continuing
Yeah.
on, you want to continue on with. Okay, so with respect to the 340, if the 40 is for the master plan, or the increase is for the master plan, why is it calculated into 2019 and 2020 as well?
There were a number of other requests that JP made, to be added to the contractual services that we didn't add into 2018, that he wants, that we're funding or proposing to fund into 19 and 20.
Well, and then, so come next year, it'll just look like nothing changed from our perspective.
Correct.
So that happens frequently, where we'll have a one-time project, but then the dollars for that one-time project consist in future years, that it doesn't go away. And that's not this department. I don't want you to think that. I'm just saying generally speaking. So my last question with respect to that is, the next agenda item is Parks and Recreation. Why isn't the Parks and Recreation master plan in the Parks and Recreation budget instead of in the planning budget?
So, yeah, so we are the Department of Planning and Economic Development. There is not a Parks and Recreation department. No one currently works there. As we've discussed this, not only with Steve, but with the Office of the County Executive, as we're looking at developing a strategy for Parks and Recreation, our department historically has been the department that has drafted all of these documents using the skills and abilities of our office to develop these countywide strategies. So the simplest way to say it is there's no one else to do it but us, and we're glad to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, JP, for being here today.
Appreciate it.
My question was either going to be for the Office of County Exec or yourself, and you're here first, so I'm going to ask you. I want to thank you for breaking down the contracts for this year. But my question is, what I'm not seeing on here, and I don't know if you're the right department, is make Macomb your home. Is that under you? Is that under the Office of the County Exec? I've gone through the whole budget, and I don't see that anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering where that is. Is that you? Is that the county executive? Is that somewhere totally different? Who has responsibility over that?
So there are two line items currently in our budget that we are deploy for marketing promotions and advertising. One of the line items is marketing promotions. That has traditionally been used to leverage any type of programming that highlights Make Macomb Your Home, quality of life, engagement outreach with the whole notion of celebrating the county, the assets that it has, and dovetailing that into a lot of the program that we do in planning and economic development as it's related to parks and recreation, as it's related to land and water resources, as it's related to educational institutions and career development type things. The other line item is the advertising line item that is in our budget, is to advertise the business development services, the planning services that our department utilizes. And both of those have been leveraged out of our department in planning and economic development to help celebrate those things we have in the county.
So is that under, from what I get to see, is that under supplies and services?
Hold, please. Yes.
Is it? Okay. Okay. Thank you, JP. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, JP.
Appreciate it.
Just looking from a raw number perspective, if we looked at the 2015 budget, it was about 2.7 million. And then, this year we're projecting out to, 3.5 million. It's about a 30% increase in a few years. How would I explain to my next door neighbor if he came up to me and said, hey, how come their budget's gone up 30% and my income hasn't gone up 30%? How do we know we're getting 30% more value in 4 years? Do we track that in our unemployment rate in Macomb compared to others in Michigan? Do we track the number of new businesses increasing per year compared to the United States new businesses increasing?
Yes, sir.
How do we know, that it's 30% better?
I not only appreciate the question, but I frankly appreciate the challenge. We're metrics driven now, not only with the amount of client interactions that we've had. The major thing that we look at the whole notion of the drastic changes at our budget is this is the first time that we've been fully staffed in 3 years. So that increase has happened when we look at not only bringing individuals, but bringing individuals that have been filled in management level positions and then other positions that have been created through reclassifications. The other thing is we look at the whole notion being fully staffed is the impact that we've had at the county. Last year alone, the ability to meet with 484 companies, which was an all-time high. Our unemployment rate sits at 3.2%. Last year alone, our department helped create 4,100 direct jobs, which was also an all-time high. Currently, right now, our department is working on 2 of the largest economic development initiatives in the county's entire history. So if your neighbor were to ask you that, not only can you confidently say that the department's doing more, but frankly, I think the department's working as optimally as it can. The other thing that I would like to say is when you look at the whole notion of staffing, which I know this board has discussed quite openly, we are below pre-recession levels still. At an all-time high, our department had, I believe, about 34 employees. We currently sit at 25 employees. So we've not only optimized operations, but we're really looking at the whole notion of how we're deploying services in each one of those program groups. It is imperative that we not only remain metrics-driven, but at the same time understanding that every single interaction we have, whether it's a community figuring out what it is that they want to be when they grow up, to meeting with a company, that there needs to be an objective. And not only with the contractual services that we laid out, but with the staff that we bring out, it's very much metrics-driven now more than ever.
I think, it's always difficult to quantify what part of the unemployment rate is related to, what somebody said or did and so forth. So it's always difficult to, one of the biggest challenges is to figure out what metrics matter and how to isolate them and so forth. So I don't know if it's, if there's a way to look at companies that you've met with that have located in Macomb County compared to, I don't know, companies that have located we haven't met with or something. It's hard to know. And it's difficult in that, I respect the challenge that you have to find a way to grapple with because, some people might say, well, how do we know these companies are going to locate here? Or maybe the employment rate's lower, but it's lower across the country, lots across the state. It's difficult. So I would encourage you to, because it is going to be tough, for me to explain, well, the budget went up 30%.
Absolutely.
That's a big increase, and then they want another person, and it's going to go up more. So the more that we can get as far as tangible results that I can explain to my next door neighbor, the easier it is.
Absolutely, Commissioner. And when we were up here a few months ago, kind of giving you the overview and everything, that presentation, which was part of the public record, had a number of those metrics which we're not only tracking. One of the other things that we're doing is we're also opening up these portals to the public. So not only can you get detailed information on all the projects that we're currently engaged in and working on, whether it's through Make Macomb Your Home, which highlights a number of our quality of life assets and initiatives, our Macomb Business Portal, which we're currently revamping, and our economic development maps. All these things are not only open to the public, but are providing detailed metrics as far as what's happening in our community.
Well, just Make Macomb Your Home, for example.
Yes.
How do we know that's quote-unquote worked? How do you measure that?
I'll give you the simplest metric. Every single day, there are 23,000 individuals that are engaging content through Make Macomb Your Home, whether it's the number of hits we get on the website, whether it's the number of followers we have on social media, whether it's the number of shares we get from our blog. These are people that are actively celebrating things happening in Macomb County. And I understand that we're talking about a brand and a moniker and what's the value of that. It is providing us dividends. It is something that is not only opening up a portal to showcase people the assets that we have here, but it's dovetailing nicely into what we're developing in economic development. It's not just about coming here and seeing what's nice and pretty on a glossy brochure, but it's actually backing it up with substance that say, if you choose to make your home here, whether it's bringing your family here or bringing your business home here, there are definitive locational advantages here in Macomb County, and it's something that's mattering when we're in a lot of these discussions with clients.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, JP.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Caramelli. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, JP.
How we doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Doing good.
Good. First, let's go to planning. How many communities are we contracted with right now?
Currently, right now, we have two communities that we have a retainer-based contract. It is the Village of New Haven and it's the City of Utica. As we stand here today, we are in talks with the City of Centerline to do a comprehensive rewrite of their Parks and Recreation Master Plan for a fee. We are also in talks and have been working with the City of Richmond on finalizing their downtown plan and doing all the community outreach and engagement for their comprehensive master plan. The other thing that I'm incredibly proud of right now and want to give a tremendous amount of credit to MCA is we're in the process of negotiating being the contractor of record for the assessment for fair housing for the entire county. This would be a 14-month process where we will literally explore every single element of housing and demographic changes in the county to not only better position us to get additional funding through HUD, but would also better prepare us for the census coming up. Those contractual services on the planning side are growing by leaps and bounds and are giving us a preeminent opportunity to really impress upon the locals how we can service them. Another area that this board supported last year that is giving us tremendous inroads with the communities is industrial zoning. Right now, we are working on developing a series of industrial zoning standards that are going to streamline the way that we permit and site industrial tenants across the county. This dovetails nicely into our economic development services and will give us assurances on what we're doing as far as locating potential clients on that end.
Okay, great. Are we actively looking and reaching out to other communities for, to provide those contractual services?
Yes, sir.
Are we still offering it if they want to have the county do their planning?
On a quarterly basis, we bring together all the chief decision makers with regards to planning and economic development for each one of our communities. At those meetings, we continually highlight the fact that we have contractual planning services at a free and discounted rate that can aid them in modernizing their planning, zoning, and economic development procedures.
Okay, great. Now on moving on to economic development.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Years ago, I went to the ICSC conference, and I think I went like 3 years in a row. And there was a section there that they actually had government, and they actually had booths set up where counties were there trying to solicit people to come to their counties from all over the country. And I know we go to conferences and stuff, but are we marketing ourselves at these conferences, setting up our own booth and showing them your Macomb, make Macomb your home, showing them what we do to try to get those, at their conferences? We are doing that?
Absolutely. So the best way that I can say this is this really builds on our partnership model. If we go to a trade show, whether it's domestic or international, probably one of the best examples that I could give you is Hannover Messe, which is the largest manufacturing trade show in the entire world. If Macomb County goes by himself and sits up in a booth, we're going to get lost in the shuffle. But we are looking at a partnership-based model where now we go with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. We go with our friends over at Automation Alley. And in that consortium, we not only are able to celebrate what's happening in Macomb County, but we have a little bit more punching power. When you go with the state of Michigan, when you're there with a business development rep that has a giant checkbook from the state of Michigan full of incentives, that'll get a company to sit down with you. The other thing that's currently coming up here is we're going to be going to the AUSA trade show in Washington, D.C., which is one of the largest military trade shows in the world. What we've historically done here is the same partnership-driven model where we're actively not only showcasing what's happening in the county, but we're going with the Michigan Defense Center under the banner of Protect and Grow. So we're not only trying to figure out what are the best ways that we can use the resources that we have, but we're trying to take that dollar and stretch it even more by saying, hey, MEDC, you're paying for the booth space already. We're going to set up a section where we can talk about Macomb County. We're going to set up economic development meetings together. We're going to go with business development reps and target these companies or target these industries. It's one of those things that we've definitely refined over the years. I think it's going to give us an opportunity to showcase some other things as we look at not only refining some of those resources, discretionary resources that we get from the state through the Collaborative Development Council of the MEDC and working more closely with even folks at the Detroit Regional Chamber on those efforts too.
Great. Now, to jump over to, you were asked a question about the Park and Rec budget.
Yes, sir.
I would strongly suggest that you get back with the Office of County Executive and Steve and sit down and maybe you contract those services from that line item. And the reason why I say that is to show the funds being dispersed from that line item for when we do go for park and recreation millages or whatever it is, that we have a line item that we're actually putting money in to show that maybe it can be some match money or whatever it is that we're actually spending it on certain projects. So I'm not an accountant, but I think that's something that may benefit us in the long run, showing the funds in that account. And then you can say we're spending X amount of dollars on park and recreation. If we don't show it in there, it doesn't show that you're spending that money. So I think that's something you guys may want to, before this budget's submitted, to really take a look at it and maybe put that money back in there and then just contract it from your department. So the last thing I have for you is that, I personally, in my business life, as a resident and as a commissioner, seen a lot of the programs you guys are doing. And you've even sat down with some friends of mine that own businesses here, trying to get them to stay here in Macomb County. And I'm thoroughly impressed. I'm happy in the direction in which you guys are going. I just have to ask you this, though. With all the great things that you're doing to try to bring new businesses here, years ago we had to switch the gear over to try to retaining them and trying to keep them here. I don't want to lose that in the shuffle, and you guys have something where we're still not only reaching for the new, but hang on to what we got. What are we doing to hang on to what we got still?
Retention is the foundation of our economic development services. The vast majority of meetings that we have are what we refer to as retention meetings. Those are with local Macomb County companies that we are calling on a continual basis. Those leads not only come from the services and connections that obviously you have as commissioners, but are generated by the local communities where we're not only making those community connections, but we're focused on a community-driven economy here. Those that have made Macomb their home are the greatest opportunity that we have to expand those business investments, keep those workers here, and look at the way that we optimize our local economy. We very much understand the importance of retention and in no way, shape, or form are going to move away from that model.
Okay. And just to share with the board, I had an individual who owns a company, and they wanted to, they have options of where they were going to go build a place. And they were able to bring up all the available property and show him in Macomb County where he could move to and what was currently available in future. Now, to be able to do that, I mean, if you don't get the chance to see that firsthand, I just happen to be sitting in that meeting, it's pretty impressive. I wanted to open up a new business in Macomb.
What are you waiting for?
Thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo a little bit of what Commissioner Carabelli said. I'm very impressed with your department. I had an opportunity to go to your seminar that you had, and I thought that some of the metrics that Commissioner Drolet was worried about, they were presented at that seminar, and just as you presented it to us early on when we first came here as new commissioners, and I think that's very important. And I think we're seeing, I think there's a lot of things going on in Macomb, and there's still a few things we're going to still find out that you can see your department's doing excellent work at that. And I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the line item breakdown on the contracts as well. That's helpful. And so I have a question with regard to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Blue Economy Strategic Plan. So we had the Bassmasters Elite. That was great. What other things are forecasted for 2018 with the $15,000 budgeted for that?
Did I leave that? Hold on. I should bring less paper next time. Blue Economy Strategic Plan. Okay, so one of the things that we have done this year out of the strategic plan is we are bringing in all of the major stakeholders associated with our Blue and Greenways economy, trying to figure out how we're optimizing the programming through our Land and Water Resources Division. All of those findings, which we have done now, I believe we have done 4 stakeholder meetings and have also done a full-scale assessment of all of the local parks and recreation and preservation-related programs in the county are going to be the foundation of the rewrite for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So the thought was to set a series of strategic goals and objectives that are going to be the driving force for the programmatic asks in the master plan. So what we wanted to do this year is see what was the missing middle. We do not want to duplicate any services on the Parks and Recreation side. We're not going to run Little League, and we're not going to operate Stony Creek. But when we look at the same way that other counties, whether it be Oakland and their generational commitment to Parks and Rec, but some more models when we look at St. Clair County and some of the assessment that the board has done, trying to understand how do they have, this resource sharing model where they're collecting a millage and dispersing it. We're discussing all those models, all those different programmatic frameworks with the stakeholders. One of the things that's been really encouraging is the whole notion of the emergence of health, community service, and wellness in this, and how we've really been trying to key into a lot of those institutions, whether it be on the healthcare side, the wellness side, the active living side. Those are some of the other inroads that also open up some funding at the state level. So when we look at that strategic framework that we've been building this year, those strategic goals and objectives are going to be the foundation for when we move forward and say, okay, what are the intricate programmatic asks? What's the administrative structure we could have together? And then how do we incentivize those that are currently offering parks and recreation services in this county, because we do not want to replace or duplicate any of those commitments at this time.
So I guess you're saying that anything that has to do with Blue Water, Blue Economy strategic planning would go in line with what we're doing with Parks and Recs?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's imperative, and here's why. When we look at the natural resources that we have and we look at the way that those programmatic elements have been developed under the DNR and those trust fund dollars, if we can make those correlations, it'll make us more competitive in their grant scoring system when we look at those projects. There's a whole nother track on the economic development side where we're continuing looking at opportunities, whether it's water quality, whether it's water-related technologies, the fact that we have shoreline and waterfront property is pretty nice advantage to have. So we're continually looking at that angle too.
Okay, thanks, JP. Thanks for the good work. Really appreciate it. Really
Appreciate it.
appreciate what your department does.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Next is Commissioner Smith. Chairman Smith.
Thank you. JP, thanks for your presentation. Very understandable as always. I have two things. One, I just have a question as in regard to the $40,000 for that master plan for the Parks and Rec. I think I remember seeing that Parks and Rec actually has a pretty sizable fund balance, and I'm just wondering, this is probably more for Steve, why we wouldn't pay for that type of plan out of that fund balance. And I mean, there might be some accounting reasons for it, but I thought that it looked like there was a fund balance, or I thought I remember hearing that there was a fairly sizable fund balance still in Parks and Rec. Am I wrong? If I'm wrong, then that answers the question.
You talking about in their grant fund? Which specific, so there's no fund balance in the general fund relative to planning. So in their grant fund where they get Brownfield Authority money and other things, there is a fund balance that's on page D13. Some of those monies are most likely, I don't know this off the top of my head, but most likely are going to be earmarked for some kind of usage based on their funding source. I'll follow up on that for you.
I'm talking about Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec.
Oh, I'm
Parks
sorry.
and Recreation.
I'm not even planning. I'm sorry.
No. The Parks and Recreation has
I'm sorry.
I thought they had a fund balance
Okay,
of about $2 million.
Excuse me. They do have a fund balance.
Okay.
What we typically use that for is for operations specific to the operation of the park, where in my mind, a master plan or creation of a master plan is more of an administrative function that would fall under either the exec's office or in this case, the planning department.
Okay, so it was just basically a choice based on your experience with
Right.
where
Yeah,
it should
so
be coming out of.
Development of a plan doesn't specifically relate to the day-to-day operations of the park. That's
Okay.
the reason.
But then again, the fund balance isn't necessarily designated for just the day-to-day operations. It could be used in general if you thought that it would be better coming from that. It's not like you couldn't use it if you needed to, right? I mean, it's not.
That's correct. And
Okay.
most of the fund balance in that fund is from the Hillside settlement a few years
Right.
ago.
Okay, and that's fine. I
And
just
so
didn't know what.
It's all the, whether we want to use it in there or use funds from the fund balance of the park fund for,
Great.
improvements at the park, for example.
Okay, thanks. And then, generally speaking, based on just being here for all these years and seeing like every year we plan and Steve plans conservatively and all these things come up, it seems like it's just, so that being said, I don't like seeing generally new positions at this point when our general fund is going, at this point the wrong way. Obviously, there's a plan to, turn that back around, and there's a reason for it. But in the meantime, I really don't like seeing new positions come out in general. However, when they come out of a plan in a department like planning and economic development, where I think you've shown the board, you spoke to it on different seminars, and we can actually see that the return on new people is there. And so I just want to say that although generally I have to question some positions that might be recommended, I like it when you come in and although you don't have a specific revenue source to make up for this, the fact of all of the work that you guys are doing and maybe even evidenced in two big plans with the brownfield development and hopefully the F-35 project, it does show that there is certainly a return on investment in addition of some positions. So I just wanted to mention that to you and thank you for the good job that you're doing.
Appreciate it.
No doubt. Very good, Commissioner. Anyone else on the first round? On the second round, Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you. Real quick, F-35, can you give us an update?
Yeah, I had a chance to speak to General Slocum this past weekend. Currently, we are looking at a proposed decision date from the DoD and Air Force on September the 30th. We have been working closely with a gentleman by the name of John Simmons who works for a company out of D.C. called the Roosevelt Group. He is the chief lobbyist hired by the Michigan Defense Center and the MEDC to advocate for this initiative at a state level. I can assure you that every single chief decision maker that is going to be in that room has heard an exhausting amount of information about Macomb County and Selfridge. I feel that from a community-based and partnership model, we've done everything we physically possibly can to get this aircraft to Selfridge Air National Guard Base. Where we currently stand is some intricacies with regards to the whole notion of active fighter wings, the phasing out of aircraft, whether it's an A-10 and F-16, what's currently at the bases. There was some discussions about geese. We assured them that we'd kill every single geese possible if that was the reason that we weren't. Yeah, you're helping. While we are cautiously optimistic, there is no way that we can speak to any certainty, but every single thing from the chiclet chart that we got that showed a bunch of green, which is good for us, to what we're hearing from some of the insiders lead us to believe that we're trending in the right direction, and we'll be hopeful to have a successful announcement sometime in the near future. I hear we all get bomber jackets when that happens too, so.
John.
That too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, again, for recognizing me a second time. JP, just the master plan for the parks again.
Yes, sir.
Would it be fair to say the primary benefit, or at least one of the major primary benefits, would be that it would allow us to leverage, it would give us better leverage for grants, that we could bring in additional revenues that we could use toward the parks?
We don't get money from the state unless we have an updated and certified plan by the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. Our plan was last written in 2014. If we spend 2018 to update that plan, by 2019 we could submit that plan and make sure there's a seamless transition into us being eligible for trust fund grants, passport grants, and other special funds through the DNR and DEQ.
Okay. So I guess my follow-up question that would be back to Steve. If the value of rewriting this plan is to ensure that we are up to date and eligible for grants, why wouldn't we take that out of the fund balance, or rather the park and recreation fund balance? It makes perfect sense to take it out of there because we're using it to leverage more money for the park. It'll provide for the needs of the park. Or the parks. That's sort of the goal. So it would seem that we could just take that money out of the fund balance instead of appropriating additional new monies for it.
I guess what I would say to that is I can certainly follow up and go back and have a conversation with the exec's office. But again, the idea was to keep as much money in there for future improvements at the park.
We'll generate future improvements for the park if we leverage grants, and we might be able to save some money in the budget by using the money in the fund balance, which it could be used for. I mean, that's sort of, it seems to me like a logical use for it. But
I'll follow up with OCE.
I appreciate that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner, if I may jump
Sure.
in on that too. I think one of the interesting things when we look at the whole notion of capital dollars that could be in a fund, specifically when we look at the whole notion of those DNR trust fund grant dollars, it is a competitive process in which a local match needs to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Ensuring that we have some form of surplus here, whether it's through a capital fund, whether it's through, as we're looking at more opportunities with non-motorized elements, working closely with Bryan and his staff, those capital funds are going to be needed as we're looking for more enhanced asks. As we're getting more refined in the way that we're navigating a lot of these parks waters, we're starting to see that there is a hyper-competitive arena. And if there's an opportunity for us to leverage administrative dollars versus capital dollars, I think that's one of the things that could benefit us down the future. But you're absolutely right, as far as how you prioritize those fund balances is something that can very much be discussed and understand how it's optimized.
Sure. I mean, just my limited understanding of it sounds that to some degree this fund balance is almost like a one-time deal with the result of the Freedom Hill lawsuits and that sort of thing. And it sounds like a smart thing to do would be to take that money and leverage it with the update of the plan to get more resources. But I understand it's a question of, does that limit our ability to, I just think it's something that should be considered. I mean, rather, because we're already asking for more personnel in the budget. We do have a very substantial increase in this budget over the last few years. And so any way we can trim that down while still getting the value is important to look at.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only question I got, John, who is our biggest competitor as from with the airplane, with the fighter jets?
So the way that we've looked at it is we feel that this is a two-man race between us and Truex Air Force Base in Madison, Wisconsin. When you look at the 5 bases that are being considered, Selfridge and Truex are the only 2 bases considered in the north where you would have 4 seasons training and testing. Boise is kind of the outlier on the west side of the country, and then you have Montgomery, Alabama, and Jacksonville, Florida being considered kind of for those southern bases. So we think it's a two-man race between Selfridge and Truex.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Could we round up the geese and ship them to Truex?
Anyone else on the budget?
He answered my question.
All right. Need a motion to receive and file. So moved. Support. Commissioner Sauger, Commissioner Leonetti. All those in favor, please vote.
Presentation, JP.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the Department of Roads. Parks and Rec, excuse me, Parks and Rec Master Plan. We sometimes roll those together. Thanks.
The budget for the park fund can be found on page E4. Total budget for the fund is going down about $51,000. Basically, what we're trying to do there is trim the utility budget down to kind of more what we feel is going to be our actual spend. Again, for the newer commissioners on the board, the revenue line item charges for services of $263,000 is made up of essentially 4 or 5 different items. We have a contract with Hillside for parking revenue and a minimum of $125,000. We get 25% guaranteed, $125,000. So if the parking revenue exceeds $500,000, we get additional money over and above that as well. So we reconcile that every year with Live Nation, really, in terms of parking. We also have a contract with Hillside to rent the Independence Building for $40,000 a year. We also have a contract with them to rent the grounds for ethnic festivals and other activities. And we also get 1% of ticket revenue. So we reconcile all that at the end of the year with them. All that totals up to the $263,000. Utilities, again, we're reducing that budget by about $50,000. We're leaving some cushion in there for ourselves, but we're trying to bring that down more in line with our actual spend. And the supplies and services line is about $231,000, which is consistent in dollars with the prior year. However, there's a couple of things going on in there. $120,000 of that is depreciation expense on the assets of the park, and the other $110,000 is other things, grounds maintenance, things of that nature going on there. What's important to focus on, in my opinion, in the park fund is the transfer in from the general fund. So that's budgeted at $8,200 for 2018, which is significantly less than prior years. I think the budget was in the neighborhood of $160,000. Again, what's happening is there's a large reduction in the supplies and services relative to grounds maintenance. Because if you'll remember, Chief Deputy Deldin was explaining that we were proposing to add a maintenance supervisor position into facilities to oversee the park for the most part. We've contracted with the road department in prior years, so that there's a shift there, but there's also almost a corresponding increase in depreciation expense because we have more assets. So it looks like it only went down $1,500, but there's a couple of shifts that are going on there. The result is that the transfer in from the general fund is about $8,200. And again, referencing comments from the planning, the budget discussion, you'll see at the bottom of page E4, we break out the fund balance in the park fund between the net asset value or net book value of the assets and basically unrestricted, unreserved. So we got about a $375,000 fund balance we're projecting at the end of 17. That concludes my comments on the park.
Okay, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I'm going to try to go about the same sort of conversation from a different perspective. First of all, why doesn't our Parks and Recs budget have a contract services line item? All the others have a contract services line item, but this one does not.
Because we don't when we pay for grounds maintenance, we just hire a company to.
Right, but you just went through a whole lot of contract service things that are in the supplies and services line item.
Well, grounds maintenance, and I can't remember all the individual line items.
But
So
every other department has contracts.
Same issue with facilities. So we have grounds maintenance in all the other facilities around the department. That's in supplies and services.
So facilities doesn't have a contract service line item at all?
They may have for janitorial. I can't remember.
Okay. So the master plan would be a contracted service.
Correct.
So, and I'm sure you've got a contracted service line item in the budget in your computer. We just don't have it here, I'm assuming.
For the park fund?
Yeah.
No.
No?
No. I don't know off the top of my head the components of the other 110,000 between, I know there's grounds maintenance in there, and I can't remember all the other line items.
Well, it seems like what we're doing with regard to this particular department is we're using supplies and services for both supplies and also any contracting that we do.
No, I would disagree. I can get the breakout of that.
Okay.
230,000. I would respectfully
Okay, so
disagree.
the reason for the internal services, this one has utilities, but for most of these departments, one of the reasons for the internal services line item you've explained to us is to properly allocate expenses where they're really happening. So you allocate the cost of electricity, the cost of different things to each department, even though the general fund, generally speaking, is paid for, so that you are properly allocating them. So if you took if you're doing a Parks and Recs master plan and you put it in contract services in the Parks and Recs department, then aren't you properly allocating it? And then the planning department could actually have it listed as a revenue because they're doing the service.
I guess it all depends on how you want to categorize your expenses functionally. So you got legislative, general government, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would argue that functionally, that master plan is a planning function, not a Parks and Recreation function. So if we're trying to categorize things accounting-wise, so.
Go ahead.
Point of information.
Yes.
Steve, I wholeheartedly and respectfully disagree with you. My point is that it's general fund dollars that's going to pay the planning department to do this master plan. The master plan is for park and recreation, which we do have a budget for. My point is that general fund dollars should be put into the park and rec fund, spent out as a contracted services to planning economic development. We show that we're doing work in park and recreation. So we show that we're spending dollars out of that line item, because if we don't, and we go apply for grants, we'll look at, you have a stagnant account, you're paying X amount of dollars to cut the grass in electric bill. You're not doing anything else. But if you show that you're doing something, I think it may be more beneficial for the county in the long run. Thank you.
Okay. Well, sort of what he's thinking. Thank you.
Wow.
Anyone else on that? I don't. All right, we'll go ahead. Mr. Chair Smith.
Thank you. Steve, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit to see if there's been any talk about a Parks and Recreation millage. I know that I've talked to a few people, and it seems like a lot of people are kind of for it, especially after talking with St. Clair County and how they do things, and kind of reenact, or actually having a fund that would be there to actually capture and have match money for state and federal dollars. It sounds like they're giving out, some decent money for acquisition of property and things like that. And I just want to know if there's any discussion going on that, to this effect, if there's any thought about it, and if you can even share
Not that I've been made aware of.
Okay. And, I mean, obviously, that could come from several different sources. Any other sources in here in the back corner left of the room that want to talk about this, or?
He was trying.
Isn't this for his new Toro?
Yeah, there has been informal discussions probably the last 6.5 years, but the same challenge, and it's only been among our office, but nothing has ever been serious about moving forward with it. The biggest problem, when you think about it, there's 27 municipalities. Many communities already have a Parks and Recreation millage. And all the communities collectively have more parks and more recreational assets than we do. We have one park. So how do you stimulate interest among a county of 850,000 people in 27 different municipalities that are all taxed and enjoy the parks in their own communities?
Right.
How do we stimulate the type of interest? We have one park.
Right. And that's what my question is. We have one
That's
park,
kind of where
so-
the discussion stops.
So I know St. Clair County did, and they were in a little different position, obviously, when they started this, but they have a pretty nice model. I didn't know if that's even been a conversation with any of the cities that even have a millage to say, listen, I know you have a millage, but this millage would also bring more money and some county leverage to, to help things out. And my concern really is, how do we do something here to maybe utilize more of this shoreline, for our, finding parks that we might be able to acquire, property here and there along the shoreline that's underutilized. And I hear about it. I just didn't know if there was anything formal even in the hopper.
Nothing has ever been formal because we kind of stop because we can't get over that hurdle. And again, we'd be competing with all of your communities here. And how do you sell that?
Have them rescind their millages.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thanks.
I'll let you know how that works out.
Yeah. I'm not spending any time on it. All right, thank you. Are you done, Chair Smith?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to Mr. Deldin, we just approved a millage there in Sterling Heights. You don't have to come up. I'll speak to Finance. And it very narrowly got approved. There was big numbers for parks, for recreating recreation. So in response to what you just said, I think it'd be a tough road to hoe for Mr. Smith or us to go ahead and try to provide a general millage again for Parks and Rec in the Macomb County area. Let's talk about, I want to talk about Freedom Hill. Am I correct in that I heard that we had a maintenance supervisor that we removed, or was there a maintenance supervisor last year that we had in the budget
We
that
were
we did remove?
contracting with roads to have someone kind of oversee the operations at the park. So, go ahead.
No, so the park was closed, for those of you that have been here since prior to 2010. The commission voted to shut down the park back in 08 or 09. Don't quote me on that. At that time, there was a full-time, year-round Parks and Recreation staff of 7 or 8 or 9 people at an annual cost of about $1 million a year. About $1 million a year. Well, yeah, part of that included a Parks and Rec director. So we reopened the park in 2012, I believe it was. Summer 2012 is when the amphitheater opened back up. And we really have just operated as a passive park. There are a few festivals there a year, fewer now than there were 3 or 4 years ago, meaning some of the ethnic festivals. What we were doing is, because under the county charter, facilities and operations really inherited that facility for all care and grounds maintenance. We do concrete work out there, we do asphalt repair, striping and whatnot. And if the roads department is involved out there, we get back charged for it. So we've had a road employee the last 4 or 5 years that has worked out there and has charged the Parks and Rec fund for any time or overtime that he spent out there. So we really don't have, while I believe now that the park and the theater are well established now, 4 years, we are suffering in the area of, facilities not only picked up that building and the surrounding acreage, but as I said to you one day last week, there are many other facilities that we've purchased in the last 7 or 8 years that we have to provide care and maintenance. And no, there is not a return on investment, but we provide a service for tax dollars, and we have to take care of we have to keep the roof over our heads so that we can provide the service to the public. So it's always difficult to measure when you're asking for additional people in that area. Where's the ROI on it? Because we're not selling a service, we're protecting our taxpayers' assets, and there's a cost to that.
Thank you. If I can piggyback a little bit on that. In the contract that we signed with the amphitheater, once their venues are over with, is it their responsibility to clean up? Because between the amphitheater and the parking lots, there's a mess there, and I see Mr. Viviano's here also. He can probably attest to that. When we clean that up, are we compensated for that? Or
Yes.
are we paid for that?
For any of the outside groups, the community organizations that want to use that park, we keep a security deposit. We make sure that the grounds are restored in good order, especially if they're driving on if we have overflow parking. We keep monies, and sometimes we have kept monies to have the grounds restored. They don't get their security deposit back until everything's back in order.
So in our budget that we're using, in fact, there is no budget, but the maintenance people that we use, is there a reason why? I've received calls that the lavatories are not open during the day. The park is not, the fences, the crosshairs are up across the reason being, again, let me just expand on that. That park is used by parents with small children. They're used by adults for whatever reason. They use them for walking the track or taking out animals. There's no way to use the lavatories or the johns over there. So the males, forgive us females, it's easy for us. We just go against the building. We don't need that. And I realize that
we have video surveillance out there now. So.
Well, you watch the surveillance. I'm not interested in watching it. But my point is, where's the big problem with opening the restrooms in the morning, opening the park in the morning, and then having that same maintenance guy close it or do whatever slight maintenance needs to be done so that we don't get people sleeping there in the evening?
Well, I know what the problem's been up until this point, and that is the entire Parks and Recreation staff was eliminated in 2008 or 2009. We have no full-time person out there. It's a passive park.
Yeah. They do, Mark, they do winterize, Joe, like, I want to say it's the end of October, and all that plumbing in that building goes off in the outside restrooms.
Come on for a minute. I've got questions for you too, then, since you're speaking of, Vince, if I may. You're saying October, but right now, today being September, those bathrooms are locked.
No, when we had the staff out there last year, we had some of the DPW guys out there, and years prior, we had it open. Now they have been closed. We open them for events, just like tomorrow there's an event there. They'll be open, but we don't have the staff there to open them, keep an eye on them, because what happens a lot of times is some of those vagrants come, and they go over there and they set up in the bathrooms. I've had to ask them to leave. I mean, I've cleaned up after them myself, actually, but if this happens with that person in the budget, they'll be there,
No,
you know.
We're not asking, when we did the F&O budget, we're not asking for a full-time attendant to be there every single day. We're not. It's for a variety of reasons. And we still, I mean, the executive's office is not prepared to ask the Board of Commissioners to give us full-time staff out there of 1 or 2 or 5 people. We're not. We don't think it's necessary. But as a result of not having full-time staff out there, those restrooms are not open from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5. They're not.
So what kind of dollars are you looking for part-time? Or are you looking for any dollars?
We're not asking for a dedicated staff person at Freedom Hill. We are not.
So, again, I'm not looking for an argument here. That's our county park. our people use that park, and they can't use the restrooms, and the park is closed. That doesn't make sense. The empathy, doesn't make sense.
Commissioner Romano, that was a decision that was made when the park was closed, and we've not altered by that. We're spreading ourselves thin. We have roads employees out there covering it. We've had public works employees out there covering it. Nobody's dedicated to that park. And again, we haven't come and asked yet because we are still deficient in many other areas of county government, when it comes to staffing and funding, as compared to pre-recession levels. We're not there yet.
What technicalities are involved to dedicate that park to Sterling Heights?
I have no idea.
Just a thought. I mean, just a thought.
no
It's
idea.
in my district. It's in my city. And maybe we could do a better job of maintaining it than the county can. And it's just a thought. Maybe something we should look at. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'll open it and close it.
Commissioner Toko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Isn't there a banquet facility on the premises?
Yeah, in the hall.
Okay, and how does that play into the budget, the hall?
Well, there's revenue in this fund. We receive $40,000 of rental from Hillside every year, and they utilize the building.
So Hillside's running the banquet center? Okay, and then the revenues are shown,
It's all part of that charges for services revenue. So there's $125,000 in there for parking, $40,000 for building rental, $35,000 for grounds. There's ticket revenue in there. We get 1% of ticket revenue.
okay, so the 40,000 is the...
It's part of the 263.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Drulette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me again. And Commissioner Romano actually brought up something I was gonna touch on. Maybe it doesn't make sense for us to have a master plan and a department for one park. I mean, it seems like it's not very cost effective. Here we are. We've got a reserve fund. We've got a department. We're going to put together a master plan. We've got one park. Maybe we just shouldn't be in the park business, and we should find a way to have either contract with the city of Sterling Heights to provide for opening the bathrooms or provide for that administration, or maybe even transfer the park if there's a mechanism to do that, or at least some contract there. Or here on Clinton Metro Parks, or maybe it's possible. Though I realize this is not specific to this budget, so it's just something I think we might want to consider as a county. That maybe maybe there's people who are in the parks business who's got already staff who are located nearby that we can have a contract with that can provide some of these services less expensively than us doing it ourselves. So I would just hope that would be something that maybe we just enter in the conversation moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette. Commissioner Duzay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Frankly, I agree with Mr. Deldin. This was in front of Buildings and Roads when I was chair way back when, and we shut the park because it was costing us $1 million a year. And we didn't have $1 million to blow on the park. First of all. Second of all, we made it a passive park because we didn't have the money to keep up the bathrooms, to clean them, to open them, to get the water running, and so on and so forth. This isn't a hole in the ground that off you go and that's it. There's a lot more to running this entire operation, especially Freedom Hill, than just opening the gate and letting everybody in. That being said, I think there are a number of reasons why the county is in the park business, although we've owned Freedom Hill for God only knows how long. Do I think we should be in it? Probably not, because we did a really lousy job running it. Now, how many events do we have? We had the Polish Festival, the Italian Festival, and so on and so forth. How many events a year do we have there? It used to be like 5.
There's probably been, the Italian Festival? There's a handful.
Yeah, 5, 6.
Is it less than 5?
But maybe 5 and maybe 4 small little events.
Well, okay, the concerts are a totally separate deal.
Right, they clean up after themselves.
Right. Now, do we have when the banquet center wasn't in business way back then, we have separate agreements with the banquet center, correct? Mm-hmm. And that, I hope, pays for itself. Fair enough. But basically, we closed down Freedom Hill because we didn't have $1 million a year. And if I'm not mistaken, Public Works was cutting the lawn there. And we had an employee from Public Works open it in the morning, close it in the evening. But between all the attendant utilities and so on and so forth that are needed, this isn't a cheap little operation. So I can understand why we shut it. I can understand why it hasn't opened up to the degree that it could be, but there's just no use for it. No big call to have Freedom Hill operate as a park on a yearly basis. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Gouget. Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question for you guys. I know the name changed to the Michigan Lottery Amphitheater recently. What sort of money does the county get from the renaming? Do we get any funding from the state from that?
They sold a sponsorship, Hillside Balloon Entertainment, whatever the corporation is called. They sold sponsorship rights for the theater. It's still Freedom Hill Park, or whatever the legal name is for the county park.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's only the theater.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I guess, Commissioner Brown, one last point that I wanted to make relative to the Parks and Recreation budget. And as Mr. Smeagol had said, we were subsidizing, the board as general fund was subsidizing the park some years ago to the tune of about $1 million a year. This year, we're going to subsidize it to the tune of about $8,200 a year. Quite a big difference. Now, the park maybe isn't what some of us want it to be in terms of having all the amenities available, but we've come a long way. It can be better, and I think we can get there someday.
Come out to the north end of Macomb County and be feeling real rural.
Fair enough.
All right. Any other questions on the budget? I see no speakers. Need a motion to receive and file the report. Moved by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Gillette. Please vote in the affirmative, if you wish. Very good. Thank you very much. Department of Roads.
The road budget can be found on page D40 through D42. The budget for the road department for 2018 is being proposed at just over 137 million, which is about a $27 million increase over the prior year. Quite a large increase in road construction and maintenance, with corresponding increases in intergovernmental revenue, which is gas and weight tax, and federal funding, which Bryan and Michelle Mikatak will be able to speak to in greater detail if requested. And you'll see a large increase in the capital outlay item from $4 million to $14 million, which you may recall earlier, or last month actually, we came before you and you approved a budget adjustment for 2017. What's going on there is the proposed construction of a new maintenance facility on 15 Mile Road in the tune of $9 million is being included in the 2018 budget. So with that, there are no new positions being added in 2018. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bryan.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the allowance to present roads budget this evening to you. Have to bear with me. This is a newbie here, first timer as far as budget presentation. So
we got lots of questions for you, so don't worry.
I'm sure you probably will, Commissioner Brown.
It's kind of hazing.
But first and foremost, I just wanted to, obviously, being new to this, I want to introduce my staff that I brought with me. they're the brains, brawn, and experience behind the roads department. So Vince Viviano, Chief of Staff, obviously he's in support of overseeing our staff at the roads department and assists with complaints, inquiries from residents and yourselves from your constituents. Michelle McAttack, obviously our Assistant Finance Director. She's definitely the brains behind all the numbers and behind roads. She does a great job, and with that respect. Walter Schell, County Highway Engineer. He's in charge of our engineering department, road construction end of it, and our programs associated with that. Leo Ciavata is our maintenance supervisor, deals with the maintenance end of it. A lot of you have spoken with him, just a face to the name. Does a great job also. And last but not least, John Abraham. He is our traffic operations director. Anything related to signals, striping, signs, connected vehicles, that type of stuff. He's your man. So with that being said, obviously, just to reiterate as far as Steve Samigo was saying, we do not have any requests for additional positions this year. Keep in mind that our funds are Public Act 51. We are a Public Act 51 agency, so we get dollars from federal and state monies, the Michigan Transportation Fund, and those are designated dollars to road construction and maintenance. So we do get obviously audited and have strict guidelines for how we allocate our funding, and obviously have special audits specifically for our road department when it comes to spending money. We do have additional MTF funds that were allocated from the state. And just a brief summary of that, from 2016 to projected 2017, we're looking at an additional 9.6 million, and projected from 2017 to 18, we're looking at an additional 5.1 million on top of that. With that additional funding, we do have some programs that we are researching and looking into implementing, as far as additional pavement preservation program monies, that's being the HMA or hot mix asphalt and concrete programs that we had presented to you before initially. We are looking at different programs as far as overband sealing, which is when we do a overlay project over an existing pavement, reflective cracking occurs 2 to 3 years later. So preventive maintenance is one of our concerns, and striving to preserve pavements so they don't deteriorate to a point that we have to reconstruct them. There are other programs on concrete pavement that we're looking at, routing and sealing programs. Once again, another preventive maintenance program that we're looking at spending these additional dollars in for our program. One of the other things that you look at as far as the capital line item, we are looking at also replacing our outdated fleet in our maintenance department. I am looking at implementing a 8 to 10 year replacement program. So every 8 to 10 years we would replace, so none of our equipment would be over 8 to 10 years old. We have some trucks in our fleet that are 12 to 15 years old. With that, one of our larger trucks costs about $250,000. And we have a need for the fixing of those is very costly when they get that old. Secondly is finding parts sometimes for antiquated equipment. So that's some of the increases that you do see as far as the capital outlay items. Once again, we are looking at staffing. I can go back to 2005 when we had 310 employees. Currently, we have about 265 employees. So we are doing more with less. But I can field any of your questions from the other specifics in the budget as was presented.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. The bad news is our constituents' fuel taxes went up and registration fees went up, and everybody's paying more as a result of that. The good news is hopefully they're going to have better roads as a result of this. But I'd like to go back and tell them is, yeah, you're paying higher taxes, but every dime of that, or the vast majority of that, is going into better roads, that you're going to get the best value out of that. How is it, though, when I look at, for example, the full-time wages from 2017, 10,000 or 10 million to the projected 18 of 15 million, that's like a 50% increase. Why are full-time wages going up 50% in this budget?
Can you refer to that?
Commissioner, because last year they added positions to the
Well,
budget.
we added 12 new positions last year.
A lot.
Okay, so when I look at 2017 actual and showing 10.7 million essentially, well, that's actual, not amended. Okay.
Yes. That's
Okay,
through
so we're
July.
looking at going from 14, the actual 2017 amended is what I should be looking at there. Okay, that explains that, and I appreciate that. Another question is, and maybe this might be more for Steve, I don't know, but the pension retiree health care is going up, and we've seen it go down in a lot of the other departments as a result of the switching over of our pension plans. I don't know if there's a reason why, especially given that we're bringing in new employees, why it's not going down in this particular department?
When we had gotten our last actuarial report for roads, our percentage of funded had dropped, so we had made a decision to fund extra over, I had talked with Steve about it, and we were going to fund extra so we can try to keep that percentage up because of all the new laws that are coming out with having to be a certain percent funded or you have to put a plan together. So our concern is that if that continues to drop, we would be in that predicament at the road department.
So the savings was put into bolstering up the unfunded getting rid of some of the unfunded
That's
liability.
correct.
Okay. Well, that does make that makes good sense. I appreciate that. I guess the only other question I would have is, the increase from past years, 2016, 2015, 16, 17, in conferences and training. Why has that gone up from like 2016, 60,000 to 192,000?
So that question always gets asked every year. Actually, I think Commissioner Kleinfeld asked that a lot of years. When the departments submit their budget, they submit all the stuff that they would like to attend or think they would like to attend. Many times, because being roads, the conferences are held maybe in Marquette or somewhere far away. We'll look at the content and say, it's not worth going to that conference. There's not enough in there. So they always budget conservatively and put in everything that they would like to attend, but many times they don't go to those. In addition, I know we have a bunch of new people that you're bringing in for training in the EAs and the...
Correct. Part of our requirements for our engineering aides or inspectors, when we bring them in for testing purposes, they have to attend seminars or training sessions, whether it's for concrete testing or asphalt testing. So we do have new employees in that respect from some of the hires from last year. And, we do our due diligence in getting that training done for them. So, obviously, whatever money isn't spent goes back into our general fund. But, each department does submit a request for conferences for their employees, whether it's for training or updating on certain certifications and stuff like that.
Is it then because I'm looking at, some of the past years, it did go up very substantially in the actual for last year. Is that because of those new employees primarily?
That would be part of the increase, yes, correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, Commissioner Drillett, as far as the increase in MTF funds, and I know I've spoken to this before and the question was raised, is it enough to fix the roads that we have that are deteriorated currently? It's basically just a drop in the bucket. It's nice, and it's a betterment, but the roads that we have been deficient for so long as far as the money spent on them. It'll take a huge, vast amount of money, significantly more than what we have currently increased, to get them to a good level. So, we are investing in different programs to improve that exposure to the public as far as doing roads and showing them that we are investing in the infrastructure. But once again, it's nice to have the increase, but it's just a drop in the bucket to get where we need to be.
Thank you. Commissioner Myjack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming here today. Just want to say thanks for Engineer Abraham. Thank you for helping me out with some of my constituents in the past. And Bryan, I've always called you or talked to your staff, and they've been very helpful to help out my constituents. Commissioner Romano a few weeks ago talked about the Sheriff's Department and the importance of criminal justice and safety being on our residents' minds, which I agree with is important. But this line item excuse me, this line item here, road construction and maintenance, is probably up there in terms of, in my opinion, what my residents care about and as far as importance goes. And I think all of you here and Bryan would somewhat agree with me on that. What I want to do is just ask you in layman's terms, just so I can understand the road issue better. I'm not an engineer, but I try to be in talking with you guys. So the road department, your responsibility is to maintain and fix our roads, keep them in good shape. And as I understand it, roads are either classified in good, average, or poor condition. Is that right?
Yes, I mean.
Okay, so. Good, fair,
poor.
Fair and average would be about the same? Okay, but there's also poor also, right? Okay, so my question to Bryan or your staff, what would you say right now the condition of Macomb County roads are, you know, good, average, poor? Where are we right now with that? In layman's terms, doesn't have to be exact. We about average, below average, poor. We're certainly not all good, which is where we should be. I mean.
Obviously, I would say significantly less good roads as far as fair roads. I don't have an exact number, but
okay, would you say that there are average, fair to poor are roads? Would you say falling in those two categories?
Yes, somewhere in that range.
Okay, yes. And it is the hope that with the increase in funds from the 7-cent gas tax increase, that went into shape, that will help that.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
We are moving more and more away from capacity jobs, which are the 2 to 5 lane. We used to do significantly more of those types of projects, and moving towards more of the maintenance end of it, overlays, and preventive maintenance type projects. We still do our, 2 to 5 lane projects, and we'll do those, but on a average basis, those are diminishing more and more, and we are looking at more of the pavement preservation programs, the preventive maintenance programs, to upkeep our roads in a fair condition, fair to good.
Gotcha. Now, Mound Road is almost 30 years old, and I know that they have that project, Innovate Mound.
Yes, correct.
11-mile road to M59. You know, to fix something like that, it's not just a repairment thing. I mean, you have to take everything out. You're talking complete reconstruction.
That's correct.
With Mound Road.
Yes.
But you're saying that in the county, there's not many projects like that are needed, is what you're saying.
Well, we do have that program. We do have capacity jobs upcoming. We're doing 23-mile road this next year.
What is that called again? I didn't hear you. What?
Capacity, which means we're
That's what that
taking
means?
from 2 lane to 5 lane.
Capacity.
The capacity reconstruct project.
Okay, was Van Dyke last year, 15, 18, was that called capacity?
That was MDOT. I think it was condition. I don't know what they added lanes.
I don't think they added lanes on that.
Okay.
When I say capacity, we're adding additional lanes for
Okay,
use.
so, but back here, this question is, and you said it yourself, that this increase is just a drop in the bucket. And yes, it's gonna help out, but it's not gonna get all of Macomb County roads to good condition, which what I hear all the time from my constituents, they would like to see it in good condition. I've only heard one issue over 20 years, people telling me at their door they will pay more taxes in a certain area, and that is for roads. Maybe it could be gas taxes, registration. They never talked about that. But the bottom line is that's not going to happen, is it? The way things are in Lansing and the 7-cent increase, and we're going to get better, but we're not going to. There's still going to be a road issue.
Correct.
Okay. Second question here, under the line item, road construction and maintenance. Can you just explain, so 2016, we're at 49.7 million, 2017, 63.5, 2018, 77.5. Okay, so we're going up.
Mm-hmm.
And then why are we going down for 2009 and 2020, going to 58 million and flattening out? Why is that happening?
Well, if you can look down at as far as our fund balance, end of year, obviously we have a pretty healthy fund balance, and we are looking at utilizing that to.
Which line item is that? Fund balance beginning of year?
Fund balance end of year.
Okay, I gotcha.
So if you look at that and you look at the years progressing into the future, obviously we have a healthy fund balance. We're looking at spending that down to create more projects and get more exposure as far as repairing for roads. But at some point, we have to back off so our fund balance obviously doesn't become too low as far as an acceptability level. So, we're trying to utilize our dollars.
All right, so is it safe to say that after 2018, these forecasts, when someone calls me and says, how much are we spending on road construction, I'm going to tell them 58.5 million pretty much after 2018. Is that fair to say?
It's a projection, yes. I mean, this is a budget process, obviously, depending on what we spend or don't spend. I mean, whatever our fund balance is at the end of this year. And
Okay.
whatever,
What would be the big
projected.
variables that can make those changes go up or down, in a nutshell? I mean, I think your staff wants to say something.
Yeah, they may want to.
Well, it would be partly whether we can retain the additional funding. When the Public Act was passed.
Can you come up and speak to the mic, please? Thank you.
When the Public Act was passed in the end of 2015 that provided for the increases in the gas tax and the registration fees, that made up 600 million of the 1.2 billion that was promised. The second 600 billion is the legislative earmark, if you will. It's at the discretion of our state house. So it's in the law, but it's not guaranteed.
I see.
So in our projections, we've looked at what is constitutionally protected and kind of taken the wait and see approach to see if any of the second half of the new money actually materializes.
Okay. Okay, and I guess one of the last questions, Brian, you say a drop in the bucket, 77 million, we're peaking in 2018. How much money do you think we would need for roads to get us all in good condition? 100 million? Just a guess? I mean, I need to know this. I need to, I'm trying to be straight with you and
there's
understand.
only so much we can do in a year in a construction season with our staffing. I mean, I guess I don't have a number for you that I can pull out.
But
and
you're
say this
you're
is-
definitely saying that the money you have is not enough to do what you need to do to get the roads into good condition, which would satisfy all of our residents. That's the point. And until that happens, we're still going to have frustrated drivers out there, I think.
I think either way, we're going to have frustrated drivers depending on where they drive, but we are working towards making more of our roads in a better condition the
Okay.
further we go on.
Okay.
I mean, that's our goal. And to just get back to your question,
Yeah.
John Abraham had presented to me here. Back in 2007, PACER ratings, which is a rating system used through SEMCOG to evaluate roads in the different communities. In 2007, we had good roads, 22%, fair roads, 56%, poor roads, 21%.
Which year was that?
2007.
Okay.
In 2015-16, we had good roads was 21%, which pretty much mirrored what we had previously. We had fair of 38%, which decreased, and poor at 42%.
So we're definitely going down the wrong way, right?
Yes, but I mean, obviously with additional funding, we're looking at turning that around to swing that to the better side.
It's just frustrating for me at the local level because I hear that from the residents, and there's nothing I can do. But in simple layman terms, I really think it just comes down to a money issue. I've heard a lot from engineering and German roads. I've heard all that stuff waste. It really boils down to a money issue as it comes to roads. One final thing, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry I'm talking too much here. St. Clair County does have a road millage here of 0.25 mils. It's the only county around here that does that has that. Brian, do you know that, and how does that work exactly?
I'm not aware of that.
You're not sure? Okay.
And I don't know how.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Myjack. Commissioner Carabelli. You forgot what you were going to ask? Well, okay. Commissioner Smith.
No. Real quick, I told you when you asked for those 12 people, I was going to ask you to tell me how many more crack sealing jobs did we end up doing by having those put on the payroll? What did we do with those 12? Remember, we hired those 12 employees, and my whole point was I wanted to expand the crack sealing program throughout the county to maximize, extend the life of the roads. Were we able to double the amount of crack sealing? Were we able to add a third onto it? What were we able to do to expand that program?
Well, obviously, that is one of the things that we are looking at as far as, getting a program together to address subdivision roads, local roads, as far as preventive maintenance. That is one of the programs. I know with our maintenance department, with our supervisor, Leo Civada, obviously we put those personnel to good use, whether it's, crack sealing or, obviously we've had a lot of issues with the freeze-thaw cycles this past year in the winter as far as crack filling with coal patch and stuff throughout the winter. They have been put to good use in Necessity, Metro Parkway, Shaner, all the other areas on Mound. Until we can get to those locations and do preventive maintenance as far as patching, we do have our forces in the field full-time on those locations. So, like I said, we are in the process, obviously, just taking over, getting my house in order as far as staffing, getting our department set, and having discussions with all department heads, especially maintenance and the engineering department, as far as getting programs together, one for our maintenance department, maybe for subdivisions, as far as joint sealing and overband sealing, and maybe another program to spend money on, maybe contracting for our local roads, a different contract. But we are looking at putting together programs like that to do the preventive maintenance to make our roads last longer so they don't deteriorate as quickly.
Right, because that was one of my big things. We're going to add those people. I wanted to make sure that I know you did crack sealing. I know that you did some cost sharing with some municipalities, but I just wanted to say, okay, if we're able to do, let's say it's 5% of our roads, we'll be able to do 7% now because we were able to put that manpower on.
I don't have a percentage, but we've increased our volume on primary and local subdivision roads. The issue with crack filling is that it's work that we schedule in the fall, because if it's too hot, the crack sealer won't dry quick enough. We have traffic that runs through our closure or our work zone. So it's something that we do in the fall, which reduces our time frame, Commissioner Carabelli, on how much production we can achieve.
So we'll see you all real soon. Okay, thank you. The next question I have is for line item transfers out to trails, investment income. Steve, can you explain how we're going from 2017 amended to 2018 recommended? Did you say what those numbers were? Because I don't remember that. Steve still here? No. Oh, I apologize. Or do you guys have those numbers? We went from 195,000 up to 511.
Correct.
And what was this for?
The transfer out for trails, that was you. Many years ago, you had asked that we take the interest income
Yes.
and put it aside to use for trails.
And so is it being used, the question is, and what is that being used on? Is that, what percentage is that, what percent can you spend on trails? There's a
We have to spend 1%.
a minimum of 1%.
Yes. Right.
So my question is that 1% plus this interest, is that projected for being spent?
We spend way more than 1% on trails. We meet our 1%, so yeah, we exceed that. And we're now trying to put even a little more away to help with the trails, with using the interest income.
No, and that's perfect. My question is, what about the actual Macomb Orchard Trail line in here? Where's, I'm sorry Steve left, but Vince, do you know where that's at? As far as the actual, because you guys are taking care of the trail for the Trail Commission, for the county.
No, we don't.
No, we don't take care of the Macomb Orchard Trail.
No, you guys are actually taking care of, if there's trees that get cut down, it's contracted through the Department of Roads.
No, we do not.
That's through John Crump, that's through, yes, that's through planning.
Okay, I'll reach back to you guys and circle around.
Okay.
I'll get back information, get back to you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Money, Jim, I know that. He's short, like.
Well, let's see.
I know I had probably still $700,000 to $800,000 left from that lawsuit still in the bank.
I just don't know where in the budget, maybe it's not in your budget.
Yeah, that portion is not within our budget.
That's in the county budget.
That I can answer. That's in the capital. There's a capital project fund for the Orchard Trail. I don't have the details of that with me to discuss today, but I know that that money, the other side of that transfer you're seeing, is into a capital project fund dedicated for the Orchard Trail. Not the maintenance. I think at one time it used to be, but it isn't now for sure. Yeah.
I'll circle back around. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Smith, Chairman Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
To your first annual
baptism by fire.
Yeah. Yeah,
No.
we're happy to have you. Yeah. So let's hope it's not your last. I have two questions. One is just, so I see repairs and maintenance and road construction and maintenance, and I'm wondering why there's two maintenance line items and what the difference is in one maintenance versus the next. And I'm looking at a sheet that's pulled out, so I don't have, I'm not looking at the.
Sorry, I missed the question. I was talking
So
just about trails.
in the sheet that I have pulled out, and that's probably not exact for there, but there's repairs and maintenance,
Oh,
and
okay.
that's let's
So
just say
repairs and maintenance is building maintenance.
Okay, and road construction and maintenance is roads.
Is the roads,
Okay,
correct? Yeah, that's
got it.
all of our all of our buildings, our service centers, our salt domes, all
Okay.
that type of stuff.
No, I just wanted to understand why the two maintenances. I didn't know what they
Yeah.
were. And so then the last question is, what's included in supplies and services? And my question comes just looking at 2016 actual of 1.3 million to 2018 recommended of 2.2 million. That's almost $1 million in supplies and services. At least an increase in a 2-year period. So I was just wondering what goes into. See, the problem is we don't get.
Supplies and services is another line item where they budget conservatively and then only spend what they need. So
Mhm.
they'll budget for shop equipment. Like I've got a list of different items that fall under there. Our insurance, all of our insurance goes under that.
So you're saying maybe in 2016 they might have budgeted 2 million, but they used
And they did,
actual,
yeah. Our
1.3.
budget has really been pretty consistent.
Okay.
But we only spend what we use. We try to budget more conservatively, so we make sure we have the dollars there.
Right.
And then if we don't spend them, it goes back in the fund balance.
And that's fine. That makes sense. I don't
Okay.
have the actual budget. I just have the actual for
Okay.
2016. And we don't get to see anything except for that line item of supplies and services at this point, without making a more of a request. But so I just wanted to know kind of what was in that supplies and services. That supplies and services. When you talk supplies, is that crack fill material, or does that go down to?
No, that would fall underneath the maintenance line item. That would be more like office supplies, computer equipment, computer software, shop
So none of
equipment,
that really
engineering
has to do with
equipment.
road
No,
supplies
no, it's
for
more
fixing or
stuff that's
anything.
utilized right by the staff.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm just going to echo the same thing that Chairman Smith said. It's really hard for us. I don't know if supplies and services, and it's not your fault, Brian. I think it's something to do with the budget process. Supplies and services to me would seem like it would be the crack filling and stuff like that we're talking about. Or is it under road construction and maintenance? Now, we've just been answered it's under road construction and maintenance, but it would certainly help us, I guess, to see some of those line items broken down. And I know that's not your concern, Brian, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank Leo for the prompt service that you've done for any of the requests that I've had. I do have one question again, and this might be for you. The special revenue fund detail that's in the overall budget, it's page D41 and D42. It comes out to about $77 million for total road construction and maintenance. It's in the big budget. I know Steve's not here, but this. And again, I'm new on this, but where does this show up on the overall budget? Like the special budget on D41?
Under the road construction and maintenance?
Yeah, I mean, I have
2018 recommended, that's the 77 million that you're looking at right there on
Yes.
D40. That's
Yes.
the breakdown of that cost.
Of that cost right there. That's the
Yes.
breakdown of the recommended 2018.
Yes, our
Okay.
engineering road construction projects, our traffic department, and our maintenance.
Yes, the numbers add up. Thank you.
No,
That's what I wanted to see.
Kraft.
Thank you,
You're welcome,
appreciate it.
Commissioner.
Kraft is after me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Brian and team, for being here. Really appreciate it. One quick question for you. I'm looking over the project list, and there's an item at the very bottom, 2018 MDOT final accounting for, is that the total or is that the 100,000? I'm having a hard time reading it on my sheet.
So
I'm just wondering what that
represents is when we have projects with MDOT, they do what they call a final accounting. They'll go through everything, look at all the cost, and then they'll either owe us money back or we'll owe them additional dollars as they close out a project. We always budget 100,000. We don't know what it's going to be, but just so we have some money there in case we do owe them money at the end of the project.
Gotcha. Thank you. I was just curious what that item was. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Commissioner Romano, last speaker on my list.
Thank you, Chair. On the lighter side, hi, Bryan.
How you doing, Commissioner Romano?
Let's talk about John Abram. I had occasion to speak to Mr. Abram regarding a passing lane on Utica Road, and I think the commissioners heard me at one of the clerk's meetings here to say that she did the two-step. Well, Mr. Abram, you do the two-step and you do it well. But, however, I am going to get that passing lane in 2018. But it's nice to see you, meet you face-to-face, know who I'm talking to. So he did a good job for me, and I appreciate it, Bryan. Thank you. That's all I have.
Have a great staff. Thank you.
Anybody else? You sure? Okay. Thank you. I need a motion to receive and file.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you for you and your team for being here and sitting through this interesting meeting. Probably got cramps. All right. Please, been moved by Carabelli, supported by Commissioner Kraft. All those vote in favor or not? Very good. Very good. The motion passes. Item number 11, contract with AECOM for traffic operations services.
Yeah, I know.
It's number 11. So why don't you explain what that is for the commission briefly?
Yes. Currently, we have our Traffic Operations Center. We get CMAQ funding, which is congestion mitigation and air quality grant money. That's a year-to-year grant program. So we do have contract services for our Traffic Operations Center that do integral work with that particular department. And basically, this is a contract for those contract personnel within that Traffic Operations Center. Being that it is a grant-funded year-to-year, we've chosen to contract personnel versus full-time, just in case that funding somehow were to be rescinded or deleted. So this is a contract for that. AECOM is the current contract company in the Traffic Operations Center, and this is a contract for up to 3 years moving forward.
Okay. Any questions on Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Who's more intimate with this?
Mr. Abraham would be.
Mr. Abraham, join you at the microphone, please. Mr. Abraham, while you're walking up, this is the original company that had the contract, correct? From the very beginning?
Yeah, they've been with us for 3 years now, yes.
3 years. So this is an extension of 1 or 2 years of their current contract? Because the way I read this, it says you can ask for up to 2, but as I look at everything, it doesn't say you're going to 2.
Yeah, the way we've set it up is just to have checks and balances with our contractor. It's a 3-year contract, and every year we renew it. And if we are not happy at the end of, say, 2018, we can always go for RFPs in 2019 to get a new group into our center to do the work.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, so you had an original 3-year contract, correct?
Yes, and that ended this year.
Now you're going to a year-to-year, you got up to 2 years before you have to go out for bid?
3.
You originally had 3-year contract?
Yes.
Yeah.
That expired.
That expired. So now you can, according to the contract, extend it out for an additional 2, but you're only going 1 year right now. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. We'll come back for the next year at the end of this year.
And then at that time, you'll have to go back out to bid, if the grant fund still comes?
No, we went back for bids this year.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand, because the contract was written for 3 years, and then you could extend it out 2 more years. So
No.
this is not an
This is a
extension?
totally new contract.
It's a brand-new contract, it's happened to be the same company guy?
Yes.
Same
Okay, what I didn't see, and if you guys can provide it to the full board when you get the opportunity, We usually see the companies that bid on it, and it breaks it down on a separate sheet.
Unfortunately, on this bid, what happened, it was an RFQ, request for qualifications. We sent it out on Mitten, which is our site. 149 companies got it. And this contract calls for MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, pre-qualification for ITS. There are around 13 companies which are pre-qualified. We personally sent the RFQ to each of those 13, and we ended up getting just one response, which was AECOM.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions? Need a motion to receive and file and send us to the finance. Moved by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Carabelli. All those, please vote on your iPad. Thank you. Item 12 is correspondence. I take a motion to receive A, B, and C. Moved by Commissioner Toko, supported by Commissioner Gillette. All those, please vote. Thank you. New business. Any new business come before the board? Thank you, Bryan. Commissioner Santo, thank you and your team. Any new business? Commissioner Romano.
No, I was just waving to Mr. Abraham.
Oh.
Giving his final farewell.
All right, very good. All right, seeing no new business, public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard?
We outlast them.
Anyone from the public? Seeing no one from the public, need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Commissioner Dujay, supported by Commissioner Kraft. All those vote to adjourn.
Outlast.
Have a nice.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. Good meeting.
See you tomorrow.